from the heart of Brussels.
Today, we are standing here at its heart. It feels like the European Union has always been here, part of our lives. It all started here. 6 nations united by a shared vision. United to rebuild a continent torn apart by war. A union of peace and unity. A union with a single market and a common currency. A union of 27, all different, but as one.
Today they are 9 candidate countries listed by the European Commission.
We live in the historical moment where the enlargement process has become the priority.
For a union extending to its eastern borders.
But are we really ready for this?
Fighting is ongoing.
War in Ukraine has brought a new dynamic in the enlargement process.
We all are Europe, and it's not just about geography, it's about history, morality and security that we share.
With war raging at our doorsteps, is an enlarged union the real answer to securing peace?
Will Europe be capable of protecting itself?
The sooner we are inside the European Union, the safer our democracy and our people will be.
To protect its voice in the world.
Enlargement is the most important geopolitical investment.
But welcoming new countries means more voices.
Europe for us is as much a shared spiritual space as it is a mosaic of many different regions, languages and religions.
Not another press point with enlargement blah blah, but mobilization of political will for Europeans in the Western Balkans, for Europe.
Will we be able to reach consensus?
We all share a common future. And to ensure stability and unity, we need to work closely as neighbors.
A larger union that strengthens Europe's economic competitiveness.
It is not only about the economy. It is what kind of Europe we want to have.
Joining the union might require effort and sacrifices.
If you want to be part of the club, you have to be both economy and value-based. So I think this is the winning combination.
How to undertake the deep reforms required.
We need to change ourselves for ourselves and because of ourselves.
The road might be long. They are staying on course.
We will not turn our back to these future EU citizens.
This is where Europe stands today.
Wir brauchen starkes Europa, ein Europa mit Selbstvertrauen.
At a time and place where history is written.
Ich sage noch einmal, wir alle brauchen Europa.
Today, we are standing here at its heart, the heart of a union of 27.
Thinking of a larger union.
Stronger, united.
The fulfillment of a dream.
And you? Are you ready for this?
The EU27 and perhaps start thinking about saying the EU28 or the EU30 or the EU36? That is the question that we will explore today. Welcome to Brussels. Welcome to this very timely EU Enlargement Summit brought to you by Euronews on the very same day that the European Commission releases its much anticipated reports about the candidate countries for EU membership. A warm welcome to all of our regular viewers on Euronews today and all those watching online. I'm Maeve McMahon, thrilled to be with you all.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm Maria today. And of course, today is an important day because the European Commission just called enlargement the most important strategic priority for Europe. And I also want to take a moment to stress that here at Euronews, we dedicate a significant amount of coverage to the question of enlargement because we think it is very important. And on that note, for the next 3 hours, we will bring you debates and conversations with the leaders who are driving these processes, of course, very important ones. And you can watch watch, as always, on Euronews, on Euronews.com, and on YouTube. I also want to welcome now, as I mentioned, the leaders behind this process. António Costa, the head of the European Council, will be with us. He obviously deeply cares about this. We will be joined too by Marta Cos, the EU Enlargement Commissioner. She is the woman of the hour today, but also the leaders of the candidate countries. We have to start with Albania, Moldova, Montenegro, North Macedonia, and of course, Serbia. I can see President Vucic is already in the audience. Welcome. And in just a few moments away, we'll be joined exclusively by Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
And President Maia Sandu of Moldova, you've also made a very elegant appearance. We're delighted to have you here as well physically with us today for this very timely, historic EU summit taking place. But to set the stage now for this very important event, I'd like to now welcome on stage Pedro Vargas, that is the chairman of Euronews. Put your hands together for Pedro Vargas.
How was it? Good? No, it's good.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great honor that as chairman of Euronews, I open our landmark Enlargement Summit. Euronews is Europe's leading news organization, delivering its content of fact-based, neutral and independent journalism in 19 languages, and with the largest newsroom in Brussels, we are Europe's biggest news channel. The European Union is at the crossroads. Our external friends and foes put us in an unprecedented challenge. Europeans look at the future with fear and preoccupation. But at Euronews, we look to the future with confidence and hope. We believe in Europe. This is why we are gathering here today to relaunch such an important but always delayed debate. Europe is a promise. Europe is a dream. But Europe also needs to be a reality. For far too long, we have promised and failed the countries that want to join us. More than 2/3 of Europeans support the enlargement. It is now time to move on with it. Our conscience and our geostrategic interest must mean that Europe makes a big enlargement until the end of this decade. And let me tell you, President Costa, thank you for your presence. I hope that this happens under your leadership of the Council. Those who oppose it will insist with two repetitive statements. They will say we are not ready, and they will say that they are not ready. Both, in my view, are not true. Let me start with ourselves, the we are not ready argument. The argument that if we have issues and problems at 27, we would have even more problems at 35 and 40. For me, this is a senseless argument. Let us not blame the institutional structures when the problem is our own crisis of direction, starting in the capitals, but also coming all the way up here to Brussels. The problem is not the European project or the institutions. The problem is mistakes we have made in the past and mistakes we continue to do in the present. The problem is people, not institutions, not treaties. It's lack of vision and strategy and too much focus on the issues of the day-to-day. So no, it is not fair to postpone once again any enlargement based on a need to change the treaties for which clearly there is no unanimous support today. Then we will also hear that they are not ready. The reality is that no one is ever really ready to join the European Union. The candidate countries feel like runners in a race. Every time they sprint to the finish line, they see that line being pushed away to a more distant position. We must be frank and ask ourselves, were our own countries ready to join? Coming from Portugal, I have no doubts to say that we were not ready to join. But we... We are a great country, but we were not ready. We joined on a geopolitical decision to consolidate democracy in Western Europe. And looking back, and you will agree with me on this one, it was a huge success. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, over the centuries, the Western Balkans have been a difficult region. Their diversity in religion, political views, and is their strengths, but it is also its weakness. Their membership will enrich the EU. The feeling of belonging together to something bigger than themselves individually will secure the European compromise and lasting peace. 100 years ago, a world war started in Europe exactly in this region. For peace and stability, for our own security, Albania, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Montenegro, North Macedonia and Serbia must join us, all of them, before the end of the decade, for their people, but also and for us. It is as much in their interest as it is in ours. Moldova's recent elections reaffirmed its population willingness to join the European Union. Under very difficult circumstances, Moldovans chose Europe, chose peace. We cannot let them down. We must judge them on their merits and their speed, and not in their regional context. Let me also humbly salute the bravery and the courage of the Ukrainian people. Ukraine is, was, and will always be Europe. The European Union is their future, and at a difficult moment, Ukraine needs more than our solidarity. We cannot accept that in the 21st century, borders are changed by tanks and drones. While invited, Ukraine is of course not ready to join, but we owe it to the Ukrainian people an honest and transparent way further. Let's make sure we don't make promises we can't keep. Let's make sure we don't lie. On Georgia, let me weave a word of alert. 85% of Georgians want to join the European Union. People who voted for the government and for the opposition. Isolation and cutting ties can never be the way forward. With dialogue and engagement, we can start moving forward again. And on Turkey, after 40 years of waiting, we need to encourage the European feeling in the country. The Turkish people are Europeans. Europe must breathe with both its lungs, said St. John Paul II. And for as long as Karol Wojtyla's and Helmut Kohl's reunification dreams are not complete, our family is poor, our security at risk, and our ambitions limited. Citizens of the candidate countries are Europeans in their hearts, but also in their minds. Let us complete and reunite the continent. Let's enlarge Europe now. Thank you. I would like to call onto the stage my fellow Portuguese, His Excellency the President of the European Council, Dr. António Costa. A palavra é sua.
Madam President, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, I'm particularly happy to be addressing you here today on the most important day of the earlier calendar for enlargement, the day when the European Commission published their report about enlargement. Since the first day of my mandate as President of the Council, I have made enlargement one of my top priorities. I start my tenure the 1st of December in Ukraine, and 2 days after, the 3rd of December, I met all the Western Balkans leaders here in Brussels. And it's a priority that I deeply believe in. And the current geopolitical context makes this priority all the more urgent and necessary for the European Union. Why? In an age of geopolitical instability, an enlargement European Union means a safer, stronger, and more peaceful Europe at home and in the world. Enlarging is the best investment we can make today for our future. And if you read today's enlargement report, I'm sure most of you already have, you will have read a striking sentence. This is the first Commission mandate since 2010-2014 where enlargement is a realistic possibility. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is our objective. Is my objective for the coming years. I will start from basics. Ukraine, Moldova, and the Western Balkans countries belong in the European Union. 2025 was a year of concrete progress for our enlargement partners. We have seen very hard work delivering very real progress. Montenegro has made the biggest progress and their ambition to close negotiation by the end of 2026 today looks credible if they continue with the same commitment and intensive work on the required reforms. I believe that Montenegro can be the 28th at 28. Moldova and Ukraine have made impressive progress. Ukraine, a country at war, and Moldova facing repeated attacks on its democracy and sovereignty, have in the course of this year completed the screening of the acquis by the Commission at record speed. Albania has also put in a huge amount of work and has greatly accelerated progress in the accession path. And I believe we can still see more progress from Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and North Macedonia until the end of this year, 2025, can be important year for them. That means for us. 3 years after the submission of a membership application, Kosovo should get a positive signal. They are an integral part of the Western Balkans enlargement perspective. And the European Union is helping enlargement countries meet all the criteria for membership and has stepped up their gradual integration in order to improve their level of preparation for membership. The growth plan for the Western Balkans and the Moldova, worth up 6 billion euros, will already delivering results, changing the everyday lives of the people by joining the single euro payment area, reducing border waiting times, expanding digital networks. And from January 2026, Moldova and Ukraine are joining the European Union free roaming zone. Enlargement today is not an abstract vision or a wish list. It is a transformation process. It is essential to consolidate democracy, the rule of law. At the same time, these are two crucial prerequisites for a successful enlargement. We must be more demanding on the standards and more efficient and pragmatic on the process. To continue the path of deep reforms, in line with the merit-based approach, and in parallel prepare the European Union to be ready, efficient, and capable of welcoming new members. Is not to put a new step, is to do the two paths in parallel, because both are necessary for the candidate countries and for the European Union, and for both. This is an internal homework which cannot be avoided or postponed indefinitely. Dear friends, the success of the European Union came from the brave and visionary political determination of our predecessors to overcome centuries of war. The same brave and visionary determination and will must be shown today. Accession partners must decide if they have that determination to move forward with their European Union transformation, or if they prefer to remain trapped by painful historical legacies. The European Union must also decide whether it can afford to lose more time and if it is ready to evolve and adapt to the current geopolitical realities. It is my strong belief that Europe must not become a museum of past prosperity. I invite you all today to continue the hard work to make the reforms to turn this realistic prospect of enlargement into a reality for the people of the Western Balkans, Ukraine, and Moldova. And I'm sure that we will do. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigada, President Costa, and muito obrigada as well to Pedro Vargas. Wonderful to have two Portuguese Europeans opening this very important Euronews Enlargement Summit, and curious to hear about the path back in '86, when Portugal, of course, joined the European Union. But, as we heard, fast forward to 2025, we're living in a very unstable world. We heard about the geopolitical turmoil we're experiencing today, and that's something that will seriously resonate with our next guest, who's been defending himself from an aggressive neighbour for many, many, many years, more intensively since the 24th of February 2022, when Russia triggered its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And just 2 days later, Euronews had an exclusive interview with Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, and back then she said, Ukraine is one of us and we want them in. The next day, Ukraine applied for EU membership. And here we are today, being joined remotely by President Zelenskyy of Ukraine, who'll be sitting down with the Euronews editorial director, Klaus Strunz, remotely. So please put your hands together for Klaus Strunz as we connect to President Zelenskyy.
So thank you very much, Maeve, and a very warm welcome to all of you here at the Enlargement Summit of Euronews. We are very, very honored to have you here, and of course, President Zelenskyy. So the first important question is, President Zelenskyy, can you hear me?
Good day. Do you hear me? And do you hear the interpretation?
That's very good. So that's good news. So I would like to suggest let's get it started, because now I can see you. That's great. Thank you for joining us. It's a great honor to have you here. So let's get it started. We will have 20 minutes of Europe Conversation. So hello and welcome to Europe Conversation. My guest today is the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy. He is joining us from a secret location close to the front line. And that makes already the point. We are discussing this important topic of EU enlargement with a country. We are during an ongoing war. What a challenging situation, and what a decisive moment in history. So, Mr. President, thanks again for joining us. And let's start with a more strategic question. Is joining the European Union the strongest security guarantee for you?
Thank you for the question. Undoubtedly, that is a very important security guarantee for Ukraine. But first, as for security guarantees, I would like to say that the most important thing is the Ukrainian values. Ukraine has chosen to be the EU member through the similar feeling of life, freedom, democracy, humanity, respect to the human rights, just respect to a human, to his or her choice. And that is why we are fighting today for all of that, for our land, for our homes, for the rights and the freedoms of our state. I am now at Pokrovsk direction, and I've come here to support our warriors, our soldiers. Of course, there are some of the issues I need to solve, but the most important thing is the moral support of our warriors at the hottest direction of the combats of the front line today. And believe me, they are at war, not only for the sake of their own families, not only for their own homes, undoubtedly it is important, but for the Ukrainian future, the future of Ukraine in the European Union.
So you mentioned it, the war seems to be intensifying. Russia fired in October more missiles at your country than ever before. Do you think that the EU is doing enough to end this war?
Okay. Russia
has intensified only because they don't succeed on the land, in the front line. That is why Putin doesn't have anything to sell to his own society. There is no success, and obviously it is very hard for him. He is spending and wasting lots of people. More than 300,000 of Russians were either wounded or they perished. 360,000 of Russians during these 10 months of this year. This is a huge number. So he started the energy terror. He hits against our energy sector. That is why there are so many missiles. This is the only thing he likes to achieve, chaos, so that people wouldn't have power during the winter without the water supply. This is how he sees his success. But he will not succeed in that as well. We will recover and we will protect ourselves. And undoubtedly, without the help of the leaders of the European Union, it will be very difficult. It would be incredibly difficult, because the systems of air defense, which we are given, and I would like to express my gratitude to Germany. Recently, they gave us 2 Patriot systems, and we are developing them, so they will be working. It's not enough, of course, but still, the whole Europe is helping us, as well as in the gas import, in the equipment delivery, to recover power and electricity supply. All of that is so important, especially during the war. But if we speak whether the EU does enough to force Putin to stop, I think that today, still, we need the US and Europe today. And then we'll have the chance to stop Putin.
And what would you say? Can this war be won militarily? Or, you mentioned the US already, will in the end require a negotiated settlement like as President Trump says it?
Well, the choice of the military way is the choice of Russia only. It started their aggression with that, and without any diplomatic issues. They started it with the military way, and undoubtedly they would like to have the military victory. It will never take place. If Ukraine is standing, if Europe is pressing, does not put up with that, that is very important to solve the issues on the support of Ukraine, that is both funding of our internal production and manufacturing and air defense, what I mentioned before, support Ukraine in all of the spheres. And the United States of America need to be open to the opportunities of long-distance weapons, long-range weapons. That is very important, even as a deterring factor. We need to have it, to use it. We need the support of the US. We need the support of President Trump about that. And it will be a decisive pressure against Russia. Then sanctions, which are so important. And here I'd like to express my gratitude to Europe, the European Union, for the 19th sanctions package. And Europe as well, because they are not postponing that. They are constantly forcing Russia to decrease their economy, which then it has to spend onto this war. That is important as well. And the latest sanctions of President Trump and the United States of America were really important against the oil companies of Russia. We cannot stop on that. We need secondary sanctions. We need following stronger gas sanctions, and also against nuclear generation of Russian Federation. All of those steps are really comprehensible, but against their military-industrial complex, so that they wouldn't construct and create so many missiles which Russia is using against Ukraine. All of those things are the tools of pressure. And this is the right thing to do if the aggressor is inadequate and doesn't want to stop. These are the tools, the things which would force and push Russia to the negotiations process, to diplomacy. And undoubtedly in this diplomacy we'll need both America and Europe.
Let's stay one moment longer with the President of the United States. Has Donald Trump given you any indication that he supports Ukraine joining the European Union?
Donald Trump is supporting Ukraine as the future EU member. We have discussed that with him. He is supporting that, and he understands that this is the choice of the Ukrainian people, and Ukraine is the part of Europe. geographically, geopolitically, and historically. And the most important thing that our people really strive for that, they want that, and I'm sure that Europe undoubtedly is fully supporting the Ukrainian membership in the EU. Donald Trump supports that. We were talking about the blockage of some of the points by the Hungarian leader, and I asked President Trump if he supports me in that to help us. So he told me that he will do everything possible, whatever he can.
And has he mentioned a kind of timeline?
Honestly speaking, no, he did not.
So, I trust you. I believe you. I'm pretty sure it was this. So the Commission's new enlargement report we are discussing today here delivers a lot of positive content concerning Ukraine. At one point, it states, and I quote, "Despite the very difficult circumstances the country finds itself in on account of Russia's war of aggression, Ukraine continued to demonstrate remarkable commitment to the EU accession path over the last year." Remarkable commitment, Mr. President. Does that sound like a compliment to you, or more like much more needs to happen?
For us, it's a very high assessment, evaluation of our work and our service, and I would like to thank for that to the European Union, the Presidents Costa and Ursula von der Leyen, and all of the leaders who are taking part in this process. And also the technical team, that is how we sometimes say, but the technical team are the huge number of people who are helping Ukraine that much. So for us, it is very important. For us, Ukraine is fighting for its independence, and our future is in the EU, which is the part of our independence, the part of independence from the vector and factor of Russia. And for us, it is an important factor that we are highly assessed during this year. It is not that easy for us during the war to conduct these or those legislative amendments. Obviously, because of different reasons. I don't want to complain. We are a very strong country opposing Russia and their wish to destroy us. That is why I am sure that we will introduce all of the legislative amendments and other necessary steps. We have faced the task, the assignment, to implement all of that, to prepare all of the clusters till the end of the current year. We will be ready, or at least we will try to do our best, whatever we can, to achieve that. And about that, in my opinion, we have the united country, united population, society, the power authorities, and that's an important factor. I wouldn't like this process to be too long, too lengthy. I mean, the processes which do not depend on us. Those are clusters opening. Why? Well, because the EU factor, the fact that Ukraine is fighting for itself in Europe is very important for the morale, for the moral support, both of our people and all of our military. That is very important, that this is the bilateral movement. And we would really like that to be well assessed by all of the possible institutions and all of the leaders who are sometimes in doubts. So for us, the quicker Ukraine is able to open the clusters and to have the fully fledged negotiations platforms, the better it is for us. It will be a supporting factor for Ukraine.
So as you know, and in the last weeks it was always reported, here in Brussels there are some concerns about judicial independence in Ukraine, especially after the creation of 2 independent anti-corruption bodies. The enlargement report says, recent negative trends, including a growing pressure on the specialized anti-corruption agencies and civil society, must be decisively reversed. What will you do to address these concerns?
Well, in my opinion, I do not see that in the report. I know that there are certain messages, but I would check the real quotes from the report. But secondly, during the war, we have implemented the widest, the broadest anti-corruption infrastructure in Europe. And I don't know about any country who has that many anti-corruption authorities. Maybe it can be in other countries, but we are doing everything possible. There is a plan, and it's not the plan which we are inventing. This is the plan which we create in the dialogue with the European Union to start the negotiations platform, to open the clusters. Ukraine has to stick to the very specific list of laws and reforms. And that is why, during the war, we need to be more specific in our steps. We are focused on that in a sufficient way. There is a request from Ukraine. Our legislation should coincide or be approximate to the European one. There are certain laws and reforms, and we are implementing them.
An interesting idea discussed here in Brussels, as you know, allow new members in earlier, but without full membership rights at first. Would you be willing to speed up a session, to give up a veto at the beginning?
No, how can I understand that? It seems to me it's very important that we would like that Ukraine could get such a treatment as to the equals. And if we speak about the EU membership, it has to be fully fledged. It seems to me that that is very important when we have at the same table equal countries in spite of their size of the territory or the population. It's important that they share similar values. In my opinion, you cannot be semi or demi-member of the EU.
Talking about veto, there is all eyes on Hungary. So Ukraine had hoped to open 5 clusters. None of them has happened because Hungary blocked it by veto. What would you be prepared to offer Viktor Orban to move this forward?
I'm not sure that Ukraine has to bargain with its own values. Russia failed to do that. So I don't know. I don't think that Ukraine or that the Hungarian leader can do that. You cannot stop the people in their rights. Well, yes, you can postpone something, but it will not be for the use of both our countries. When I'm speaking about our countries, about Ukraine and Hungary, I'm totally sure that Hungarians are very friendly people. They are supporting Ukrainians, as well as the Ukrainians are respecting any nation of Europe. This is the equality, this is the respect and the values of our relations. That is very important for the future. We don't have the right as the leaders to think about ourselves and about our elections, because this is just 1 minute in the history of our nations. That's just nothing in comparison with what can be destroyed relations between the people. This is the most important, not to lose this good neighborhood. That's what's important. I don't think that I have to offer something to Viktor Orban. I think that Viktor Orban has to offer something for Ukraine, which is protecting the whole Europe from Russia. And even now, during this war, we did not get any support from him, support of our vision of life. We wouldn't like still that Viktor would support Russia, because blocking of Ukraine in the EU is the very specific support by Viktor of Putin, and that is definitely not that good. In my opinion, that is my subjective opinion.
there is a totally personal impression from my side. Sometimes it looks a bit personal between you and Viktor Orban. Are you ready to repair this relationship, or are you simply hoping for a government change in Budapest next year?
First of all, I don't think that anyone has the right to influence the choice of the Hungarian people and the elections in Hungary, in Budapest. That is their personal right, and I don't want to have anything in common with that. I think that this war, the war for the freedom of the country, which is 40 times smaller than the aggressor is, this war will not forget anyone and anything. There will be peace, peaceful times, and we would need to look straight forward into the eyes of each other. We need to have the opportunity to respect each other, and that's it. It's nothing about being personal. It's not about personalities. We are at war for our survival, for our lives, and we wouldn't like any other front lines, even without weapons, any political front lines, open front lines by other neighbors. That's it. We are at war for survival, and we would really like the Prime Minister of Hungary to support us, at least not block us. If we do everything, if there are the rules and we comply with them, whatever is needed to open the clusters, we would like us to be respected. And it's not only the respect to us, but the respect of the Hungarian leader to the rules and regulations of the European Union, as Hungary is the member of the EU. Those are the rules. So you need to do lots of important things, and then the cluster after cluster is opened. That is the way.
So let's end with a, let's say, more personal approach, and let us look forward. Where will Ukraine and the EU be in 2030? Or, as I said, in a bit more personal view, will you be the president who brought Ukraine into the EU?
First and foremost, I would like to believe that Ukraine will be in the EU before that, earlier. Maybe it sounds a science fiction for you, but still, the protection of independence of Ukraine from Russia also sounded science fiction before. I do not hear
you. You open again the timeline, what is your wish? If it's earlier than 2030?
I would like that to take place in the fair way when Ukraine is standing for itself and when the war is over. I think it would be just and fair, because as I already mentioned, we are at war for this kind of future, for our Ukraine and for the future of Ukraine in Europe. I think that is fair, so that Ukraine, after the end of the war, could become a full-fledged member of the European Union. Undoubtedly, I would like to be the president who is the president of Ukraine, which is in the EU. But it does not mean, definitely, that this is the main priority. The main thing is that Ukraine could join the EU. But who is the president then, at the moment, is the secondary thing.
So thank you for this preview, a bit of personal previews. Thank you for being our guest today, and have a good and successful day. And when we wish you that, it's much more than just a polite closing. So thank you for coming on the Europe Conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was Klaus Strunz there, editorial director of CEO, speaking, of course, to Volodymyr Zelenskyy, president of Ukraine. So a warm thank you to him as well for being live with us on what António Costa, the president of the EU Council, said today was literally the most important day on the Brussels map for that topic of EU enlargement. And now it is time to focus on a country whose fate is very linked, in fact, to Ukraine, on Moldova, submitted the candidacy back in 2022, and we're thrilled to have President Maia Sandu with us here physically in Brussels. Come up on the stage. You'll be sitting down with Euronews' EU editor. That's Maria Tadeo. So a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. Well, thank you very much. And welcome to the Europe Conversation. My guest today is Moldova's President, Maia Sandu. Thank you very much for being with us on Euronews. Of course, when you run for the election, and you clearly won that election in very difficult circumstances, a choice was very clear. Whoever voted for Maia Sandu was voting for Europe, and it was voting to join the European Union. The obvious question maybe, perhaps it seems obvious to you, but why is this such an existential question for your country?
Well, first of all, because Moldova wants to continue to be a democratic country, wants to be part of the free world. And of course, because of the security threats that we have been experiencing, because of the hybrid war that we have been experiencing, especially since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So because we want to be part of the free world, and the membership of EU would allow us to achieve that.
One of the questions, obviously, when it comes to enlargement is that you wish to join, the EU wants to take you in, but there's hurdles in between, and that can get extended, and it becomes very difficult. What is the concern for you if this process doesn't move fast enough? Because I'm sure you think about this at night.
Well, of course, the first question is for us, because we have now an excellent political opportunity. We have significant popular support, but also we have significant commitment in all state institutions to implement the EU reforms, and it would be a pity to lose this time. But also, you know, we won the battle this time at the previous 3 elections, but it doesn't mean that Russia is going to give up on Moldova. And if we want more security in the region, if we want more security for Europe, but also for Ukraine, we need to make sure that we don't lose time in Moldova and we consolidate our country and our democracy.
So to put this in very crude terms, if you don't join the European Union, do you believe there is a threat to the sovereignty of your country? And ultimately, this leaves you totally at the mercy of Russia.
Of course. You know, it's not easy. We have, in the last 12 months, we had 2 national elections and a referendum, and we have seen an unprecedented influence, external influence from Russia. It was not easy for us to deal with so many challenges, but we knew that Europe is helping us, is next to us, and that we have an objective to become a EU member state. If we don't deliver in the next 3 years, we have the presidential elections in 3 years and then parliamentary elections, then what's going to be the message to the people? Because you might have the situation that the government has delivered, and we have seen even in today's report, I haven't seen the report, but I've seen some statements, including by Commissioner Kos, that Moldova did manage to show significant progress. So if you deliver at home, but you don't see progress on behalf of EU, then of course this creates significant risks for Moldova and for the rest of the countries in the region.
And you mentioned the report that was put out by the European Commission with the recommendations, of course. They say that you're making huge progress, again, in difficult circumstances, and they also say you're ready to open all clusters in November. The obvious question is, why has this not been done before? It's almost the end of the year.
That's a question to the EU. We have been ready since February to open the negotiations on the first cluster, and now EU says that we can open all the clusters. And I do understand that there are all kinds of solutions, but EU also needs to have a timetable to take a decision, a deadline to take a decision on this. Otherwise, they can discuss, for a long time.
And I have to ask you a follow-up question, because some believe, of course, in Brussels, that the concern is not so much Moldova, the issue, but is Ukraine. And many look at the Moldovan bid and the Ukrainian bid as joint bids, as twins. You applied almost at the same time. Is that how you see it?
Well, the documents say that it's a merit-based approach, and we do believe in a merit-based approach, and it should be both for Moldova and Ukraine and for the rest of the countries. As we could see in the reports, both countries are ready to move to the next steps. So it's now really up to the EU to adopt a decision and to move forward.
And on that point, however, of course, is the elephant in the room in Brussels. Just a final point on this. The issue with the clusters and the negotiation is because, in a way, Moldova is now in the cross battle between Ukraine and Hungary. There's a veto along the way. Many look at it as a joint bid. The two need to move together, but Ukraine has serious problems now moving forward because of this veto. Is there a way that this can be solved? Is there an overcoming? Would you be okay with that?
There are solutions, but again, these are to be taken by the EU member states and by the EU institutions. It's not easy, but if the EU becomes a little bit more creative and if EU wants to solve this issue, I'm sure it can solve it.
And then, of course, we have to talk briefly about the election campaign, because what happened in your country, and it has been documented, it's an unprecedented interference in an election. Now that there's been time to settle after the election took place, what is the sense that you perceive? What are the threats that you see moving on forward? And again, is there something that you learned from this campaign and this election, which I repeat, it's not the only one, but again, it put the focus on there is interference going on in European elections?
Well, it's easy in Moldova to see Russia's interference because it's been brutal and most of the citizens have seen it. There were many dimensions, of course, the disinformation and manipulation and trying to threat the people with the war that if you vote for EU, then what is happening today to Ukraine is going to happen to you. Attempts to discredit the Moldovan state and the Moldovan authorities, attempts to organize violent protests, the illegal financing of political parties and campaigns, and even attempts to buy votes. So the influence was so brutal that everybody could see it. In other countries, in EU countries, of course, Russia cannot do all the things that it is doing in Moldova, but the influence can be also very damaging, and for the people not to see it, because when it's about manipulation of information and disinformation, it's much more difficult to see it. In our case, what helped, and we have learned the lesson of last year's elections, was prevention and exposure. The state institutions worked very hard to follow the money from January 1st until the day of the elections, to sanction those who were using Russian money in the elections to finance political parties, their campaigns, or attempts to buy votes. Also, the independent media in Moldova did a very good job by exposing how Russia was hiring people for their troll farms and how they were producing this disinformation content and distributing it. So it was a whole of society effort, but again, it was easier for us to make people aware of these risks, and then people knew that what was at stake. It's more difficult in countries where this influence by Russia is not that brutal.
And President, of course, with all due respect, many would say this is not really new. This back from the Soviet playbook. If there's a way to interfere, they would try to do that. The issue now, and perhaps why it's magnified, it's because the West is not being strong enough. In your view, is the West being weak? Is there an issue with the leadership?
Well, I do believe that for a long time EU didn't take seriously Russia's danger. And I do believe that now the biggest problem is with the online disinformation, because we do have regulations of the audiovisual, but what happens online, and I'm talking about the inauthentic accounts, what is not genuine people's views, what is amplified, again, with money coming from Russia. This is the most damaging part, and I think everybody should take it seriously.
Can I ask a question which was not really at all something that I planned on asking, but now that you mentioned the digital and the things that you see on social media, I remember the Vice President of the United States said, if your democracy can be unsettled by a bunch of TikToks, maybe it's that your democracy is not that strong at all. He said that at the Munich Security Conference. Is that something that you think it's fair, or you go, actually, no, what we're seeing now, it's unprecedented. You've never seen a country like Moldova, small country, dealing with this amount of pressure.
Again, when this is genuine, when it's a genuine dialogue of people online, that's one thing. But in Moldova, we had like an example when BBC infiltrated one of these troll farms, and they accounted for 100 accounts on TikTok, which distributed videos which reached 55 million, or there were 55 million views in a country of 2.4 million people. So I'm talking about inauthentic account and amplified content using illegal money. This is where we need to look into, because this has nothing to do with democracy.
And I want to go back into the specifics of the process of enlargement, because the Commission is saying, and for some, this is basically around the corner, 2028, you blink and we'll be in that year. You're ready to close the negotiations. You could be in a position to do that. But how do you do that so fast in 2 years when we've seen the real difficulties? I mean, we're in November, the clusters are not really moving. How is that going to change in the next 2 years?
Well, we have shown that we are ready and we can do a lot of work in a short period of time, and we are very committed, and we understand that there is a lot that we still need to do. But we also want to see the same determination on the part of the EU to find the solutions. In the past, EU, every time the enlargement was happening, EU had to come up with unorthodox decisions, and they've managed to do it. So it's really about the creativity, but also of the commitment of the EU to find the solutions.
You know, that's a perfect segue, because there's a big debate around the idea of unanimity. Unanimity, obviously, in this process is absolutely clear and needed. No country will join if the 27 don't agree. But there's a debate introduced by the head of the European Council, who said maybe some parts could be unanimous, maybe others just require majority. When you look at unanimity, is that something that you think the EU could get creative?
Yes, I believe it should get creative, and I do believe that it's not easy with the internal reforms, but these are not the first internal reforms of the EU. It has managed to do them in the past because it wanted, so I'm sure that it can find solutions now as well. It's in the interest of EU as well. You cannot allow for some dozen countries to be used by authoritarian regimes against the EU, because this is what's going to happen if there is not going to be a real perspective for the EU integration for those who are working hard to meet the EU standards.
Do they understand that? Because I know you've said we need now from now on clarity, but also engagement. Do they understand that? Or they go, obviously you're lobbying for your country, you have to say that.
Well, we've been talking, and I'm using my time here in Brussels, of course, to talk to member countries, but also to EU officials to find solutions.
Do you think something around this could change in the next few months? I know it's a difficult question, but did they give you an...
I really hope this is going to happen. We need solutions in the next few months.
And did they give you an indication, however, when it comes to unanimity, the clusters, how to move forward? It's different, a wish to an indication. Was there an indication?
Well, we will continue to push for clear solutions and clear deadlines for the solutions to be enforced.
And then I want to go into some of the reforms, because they also say, obviously, there needs to be reforms, internal reforms, which are those that you allude to, unanimity and how to work within the EU, but also the external reforms. And when it comes to Moldova, they also say there are ways in your economy that you need to open up. It needs to be much more transparent. I know there's a conversation about there's Soviet practices that still remain and they're difficult to erase. What do you think is the biggest problem? And also, what do you say to Europeans who go, I know very little about these countries. What I hear is not very positive. Why should they join?
Well, I just said why we should join, because if you don't support us to stay a democratic country and participate to the stability and security in the region, then we're going to be used by Russia and are going to be used against Ukraine and the EU countries in the region. We do have important reforms to implement. Justice sector reform is one of the reforms, which is not easy, but we have made progress, especially with the external extraordinary evaluation of judges and prosecutors, which is about integrity of judges and prosecutors. We have made progress in fighting corruption, and also the Moldovan people can see the first results. So we should continue with this reform. It's not easy. We have made significant progress in the energy sector. 4 years ago, we were 100% dependent on Russian gas. Today, we don't consume any Russian gas, with the exception of Transnistrian region. We are gonna finish by the end of this month the first high voltage electricity connection line with Romania, which is going to connect us directly to the EU market. And talking about timetable, I can give you examples when EU kept telling us that we need several years to connect to ENTSO-E, and then when the war started, we connected to ENTSO-E in just 1 week. I can give you example when EU would tell you that to have an agreement with Frontex, you need a year. We managed to sign an agreement with Frontex in 1 week. So when EU institutions want this, they can make it happen very quickly.
And just going back to Moldova and again going up to the economy, one of the points that is also made is that the economy needs to get much stronger to be on an equal footing to the rest. Yours is a country obviously by GDP that ranks the lowest among, Europe and maybe would be EU members. How do you see that evolving? Because as it stands and going back to the European population, they can go and say, we're just too different. The numbers show that.
Well, first of all, the Moldovan economy has been affected significantly by the war. It's difficult to attract investors when you have the war next door. And of course, there is also the demographics. 1/3 of Moldovan population is abroad, and most of these people are in the EU countries. They're already contributing here and paying taxes. 1/3 of the Moldovan population has already EU passports. So, you know, we are almost there. We just need to make it official. Of course, we have to improve our economic situation. We are working hard. We're improving the business environment. But given the war in Ukraine, it's not going to be that easy for us to make miracles in the next few years. But with support from EU, we have been able to maintain the living standards. And now, after these elections, we do have higher chances to bring Moldovans back, but also to bring more investments.
And as you mentioned, the war in Ukraine obviously had an impact on your country. It also had an impact on all of the European countries and the EU countries through energy. But I wonder specifically, when you look at your process, do you go, we are conditioned to some extent by the war. If the war in Ukraine does not end in the next 3 years, does that have an impact on the material progress you can make? Because some would argue the uncertainty remains.
Yes, that's true. The uncertainty remains, but it doesn't mean that we cannot improve our economic situation. Some of the investors will not come to Moldova, but some are already coming. And this is also a contribution or the result of the policies that we have been implementing.
So in any way, you don't think if this war continues, and of course it's very difficult to put a date on it, no one knows when this war will end or how, you don't see a way that this can destabilize your bid? You think that you can stay on your track even if all of this is happening?
Well, of course, we are very grateful to the Ukrainian people and to the countries which support Ukraine, and this is one of the conditions for Ukraine to resist and for the EU and the democratic world to continue to support Ukraine. Otherwise, the war, of course, continues to be a threat to Moldova and not only to Moldova.
And just lastly, of course, you will be meeting with different European officials. Obviously, this report has come out. A lot of the work will now be dictated by a timeline. We've talked about what they demand of you, but I wonder in your conversations, what is it that you will be asking from them in priorities 1, 2, 3 that can be done over the next year? So specific matters that can move.
Well, for now, it's opening the negotiations on all the clusters, as they have said in the report that we are ready. So this is what should happen.
President, would you consider that a failure of the EU before the end of the year? They promise a lot.
I don't want to think about failures. I want to believe that by the end of this year, the EU is going to find solutions.
For all of the clusters?
For all the clusters.
And then lastly, just when you look at next year, if you just go in an order of priorities, this is what we would like to see. What is it that you will be asking? And not just general ideas, but just specific things that you say, when we need engagement, what does that mean practically? Is it more meetings? Is it delegations go in there? Is it more dialogue, direct dialogue?
No, we really need to now sit and work. We need to get the closing benchmarks from the EU, and these closing benchmarks need to be agreed by all the member states so that we could work very seriously in the next 2 years on meeting these closing benchmarks. And of course, the support that we might need for some of the reforms based on the agreements we're going to make.
And just lastly, when you look at 2030, maybe even 2035, what do you see?
Well, in 2030, I see Moldova part of the EU.
Well, President, thank you very much for joining us. And of course, that was Maia Sandu, my guest in this Europe conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maria Tadeo, for that. And thank you, President Maia Sandu, for covering a lot of ground in a short space. Thank you so much for being with us here physically at our EU Enlargement Summit on this very important day. If you missed that interview, you can, of course, watch it back. It will be on Euronews and Euronews Online, translated in all our official languages. So stay tuned for that. But now, it is time to focus on another very important EU candidate country, North Macedonia. For this 12-minute conversation, a brand new show on Euronews, I'm thrilled to welcome up Euronews' correspondent, Sasha Vakalini. She'll be joined by the Prime Minister of North Macedonia, that's Hristijan Mickoski.
Hello, thank you very much for being here. Please take a seat.
Thank you for the invitation.
We are going to hear right after Moldova, of course, we're going to continue this conversation, of course, about the candidates and the long way to the European Union membership. You do have great experience to share with some of the candidates there. This is indeed Euronews' new format, 12 minutes with, and we're going to have 12 minutes with Hristijan Mickoski, Prime Minister of North Macedonia. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invitation, of course.
You are a very experienced candidate, if I may say. Now, the country submitted the application in March 2004.
Practically, we started this journey more than 2 decades ago, 2 decades and a half, 25 years ago. 25 years ago, we signed that Stability and Association Agreement with the European Union. We've become a candidate country since 2005, together with Croatia. We received first positive report for starting negotiations in 2009, together with Croatia. And unfortunately, we are in the same place where we were 25 years ago, due to some artificial reasons. Not because of the Copenhagen criteria, not because of the fulfilling some objectives, but because of some artificial disputes, such are our national flag, our national name, our country name, change of constitution this, change of constitution that. Again, there is another hurdle, another constraint imposed in front of us for changing of constitution. So it's not about fulfilling recommendations and Copenhagen criteria.
You're calling them artificial. How does it make you feel knowing that for over 2 decades officially in the candidate status, yet again there is more and more roadblocks?
We do believe that our future is in European Union. We are a part of European continent, and we do believe that integration of Western Balkans in EU means added value for EU itself, and this means reunification on a sort of way of European continent. And I do think that the future of my country and the future of my nation, Macedonians, is within European Union. And therefore, despite all those humiliations and disappointments, and despite the current frustration which is inside of our citizens, we do share the same values.
Let's talk a little more in details about some of those. Right after finding an arrangement with Greece, you then faced a veto from Bulgaria. Yeah. And this is the current situation. I want to hear what's your take on it, but also what is the main obstacle now, today, in your dialogue with Sofia?
I will try to explain.
Because now, every time there is a conversation, and we've heard today from the leaders of other candidate countries, this issue of unanimity and then the vetoes, obviously, is a very important conversation. And you know exactly how long it can take?
We know what unanimity means for us and what type of sacrifice we've did in the past. But nevertheless, this is a past. I would like to talk about the current situation. When there was a PRESP agreement on the table and when this name issue was on the table, a lot of people from all over the world came into our capital in Skopje trying to convince us that, look, you are the front runners in the region, you are far, far ahead compared with the other countries from the Western Balkans. Immediately when you will provide solution for this dispute, then probably immediately you've become a member of NATO, and it will take probably 4 or 5 years, and you will become a member of EU. Those 4 or 5 years expired 2 years ago. And we are at the same place where we were 2.5 decades ago. Why? Because now a new hurdle, new constraint is in front of us. Again, change of a constitution. What is the substance of this new hurdle, new change of our constitution? We need to add into the preamble of our constitution, which is a descriptive part of our constitution, a part of Bulgarian people which are living in our country. And according to the last census data, we are talking about a couple of hundred people. We're not talking about millions. We're not talking about hundreds of thousands people. We're talking about literally a couple of hundred people, which declared during the last census that their mother tongue is Bulgarian language. But however, citizens of my country, full of frustration, are asking me, okay, Prime Minister, what is now? What is now the problem? Why we need to change our constitution again? Okay, if we do this, this will be the last one, or probably there will be some additional in the future. Why we need to bring a couple of hundred citizens of our country into our constitution? We're talking about violation of someone's human rights. Who we are politicians to judge whether someone's rights being violated or not? We can only misuse that issue. The real institution which is judging whether someone's rights being violated or not is in Strasbourg. It's called European Court for Human Rights. And what European Court for Human Rights says during the last couple of years, 14 times in a favor of Macedonian community in Bulgaria and 0 times in a favor of Bulgarian community in my country. So, then there is another question, additional question. Why we should change our constitution then? Why we are not talking about Macedonian community in Bulgaria? What about their human rights? What about their human rights because they are not allowed to register non-governmental organization? We're not talking about change of Bulgarian constitution. We're not talking about a sort of reciprocity. We're talking about registering non-governmental organization. And what we are saying, okay, the best corruptive government in Europe accepted that deal to change constitution, suspending the parliament in my country, suspending the voice of the parliament in my country, and they are now in the history. There is a new government, and this new government is saying, okay, those guys, those ladies and gentlemen, accept it. But what about international law? What about resolution that is protecting human rights in the countries which are in the perimeter of European Union?
How do you communicate that specifically with this community? How do you build this dialogue with them? Trying to convince them, probably, or explain it to them.
You mean about Bulgarian community? They have all the rights. Our constitution is that-like. They have literally all the rights. Practically, they are a part of our institutions. We are talking about a couple of hundred people. We're not talking about millions. We're not talking about hundreds of thousands. While on the other hand, we have tens of thousands members of Macedonian community in Bulgaria, which are not allowed, again, I'm emphasizing this, which are not allowed to register non-governmental organization. We're not talking about change of Bulgarian constitution. But okay, again, I'm saying, okay, they are in, we are out, this is a bit of bullying, okay, we would like to see ourselves on the table in Brussels, and what is now the price, and whether this is the last price that we should pay. This is the real question.
How do you see the other EU membership hopefuls, the candidate countries who are facing quite similar obstacles on their path? What would be some kind of piece of advice that you could share with your experience? Again, given that you had to overcome first one veto, then the second one veto, and then, as you said, who knows which one might come next?
I can't remember similar case. Maybe in the past that was a dispute between Slovenia and Croatia. In the meantime...
There is a certain veto happening now with the candidate countries, as we've heard with the president of Ukraine.
No, I'm talking about the past. About the current situation, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that the similar situation will occur in the future. Because if someone is witnessing that this veto tool works, then we should apply the same recipe. Why not? Because if someone dares to bully someone else who wants to join the club, why the others should be silent? This is not normal. If we are accepting that principle once, then this principle will destroy all the values developed by De Gasperi, Schuman, and Adenauer when this organization was developed. So, the European Union itself should ask themselves what we are doing. What we are doing with this unanimity. And is it according to the principles and values based on which we've been developed? So, I'm not surprised. And probably this will occur in the future again and again because it works. It obviously works because 2.5 decades ago, we started this journey and we are at the same place where we were 2.5 decades ago. Why? Because someone is misusing this tool.
And in this current situation, my final question to you would be, how disappointing it is for average Macedonians to, as you say, for over 2 decades to be, these are generations who've been waiting for over 2 decades and yet facing these roadblocks.
Very much.
Are they losing the motivation to join the European Union?
No, definitely. The support is the highest in the region, maybe, or among the highest in the region. I'm working as a professor and teaching mechatronics. For me, it was in my previous life. Now I'm the Prime Minister for almost a year and a half. But I was very sorry when I was witnessing how my students are willing to depart from the country. Why? Because simply they were missing hope. They felt hopeless. And most of them are living now in the European countries, in the EU countries. When I was elected as a Prime Minister, I said, okay, this is a hurdle. Probably there will be a lot of challenges in front of us until the very end. This is the destiny of the small nations. The big ones are doing what they can, and the small ones are doing what they must. Unfortunately, we are small. But let's do our homework. Let's finish our homework. Let's create a good environment. Let's bring back home youngsters, and let's develop something that will be good for them. And let's deliver homework that will impress EU. And maybe then someone from EU will say, enough is enough. Let's do something for them. Otherwise, this is damaging our values, and practically this does not have a future. And that's why I do believe that we need to finish our homework, and we are delivering. Since we were elected as a government, we are going in terms of economy. We have the biggest growth of our GDP, either it is real or nominal, among the top 3 or top 5 in the EU this year. In the previous year, we have low inflation rate, macroeconomic situation is quite decent, and people are coming back home, which is good.
So they're not losing. They're not losing. But thank you very much. We'll have to wrap it up here. Thank you for this experience and for sharing it with us here for the enlargement talks. That was 12 minutes with Prime Minister of North Macedonia, Hristijan Mickoski. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. It was my pleasure.
So much, Sasha Vacalini, there for that, and of course to the Prime Minister. Fascinating to hear about your path from being a professor to Prime Minister, and also about those years and years of waiting to join the European Union. I've heard as well a lot of questions here on stage for the European Commission, so it's worth pointing out that a little bit later in the programme, the EU Commissioner responsible for enlargement, Marta Cos, will be with us here live at our Enlargement Summit, so stay tuned for that as we move on in the programme and focus on a country that has said it hopes to be the next EU member. I'm speaking, of course, about Montenegro, and we're thrilled to have with us here physically in the room today the Deputy Prime Minister for Foreign and European Affairs, that's Philip Ivanovich, and he will be speaking to Marta Gwynne-Jones from Euronews. So a round of applause for them.
Welcome, Minister.
Hello.
Take a seat.
Thank you.
My guest is Filip Ivanovich. He is the Deputy Prime Minister for European and Foreign Affairs of Montenegro, and despite being the smallest of all the countries wishing to join the EU, it is considered a frontrunner and widely tipped to become the next EU member state. Deputy Prime Minister, welcome to 12 Minutes With. Thank you for joining us on Euronews.
Thank you for having me and for talking about Montenegro.
Well, let's talk about Montenegro. As I said, the smallest but the most advanced on its path to becoming an EU member. And you just received a glowing appraisal from the European Commission saying that if you keep up with this speed of reforms, you are on track to join in the next 3 years. Tell us then, what is the secret recipe for Montenegro's success?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that the report that we have just received is additional evidence to the plan that we as a government had, which is to have each of the reports being better than the previous ones. So previous year we had the best report up until then, and now this is the best report ever, so to say. So it is evidence of a very hard work of the government of Montenegro, but not just of the government, but also of other political institutions in the country. But it is also an introduction, I would say, to a very successful intergovernmental conference that we will have by the end of this year, where we will close several chapters. And on the other hand, it is, let's say, a blueprint of what we need to do in the forthcoming 12 or 13 months in order to fulfill our goal to finish the negotiations and to close all chapters by the end of 26. So I would say that the political dedication and hard work are the key ingredients of this success.
If you do meet that target and you are joining the EU around January 2028, as you aim to do, it will be 20 years since you first applied for EU membership. Do you feel that the process has been too demanding? Do you feel it's been too burdensome on you as a country?
It's not an easy question because, of course, it depends in what period of time you make this question. So indeed, we have been negotiating for the past 13 years, and for many years the whole process was, I wouldn't say too demanding, but it was too technical. There wasn't any political will from the side of the EU member states to continue with the substance of enlargement. However, this has changed in the past 3 years, and we have made really good progress and we have made really good advancements. And unlike in the previous period of time, now we have a very generous and very important support from the European Commission, but also from EU member states. I would say that the European Union has finally understood that enlargement is one of the, if not the best possible policy that EU has ever had. It's actually the essence and the substance of the European Union, and that enlargement plays a key role in transforming European Union into a geopolitical and geostrategic player. So Montenegro is very much keen on contributing to this kind of dimension of the European Union, and we are looking forward to becoming the first next member, as you have said, of the EU, and this is why we are saying 28 by 28, so 28 member states by 2028.
We do hear, however, from EU officials, especially here in Brussels, concerns about the process of enlarging the Union and potential plans to integrate new members without giving them full voting rights. It's, I believe, a particular response to the way that some countries already within the European Union are using their veto power to block some foreign policy decisions. How would you feel about that? Would you accept that in 2028 Brussels would tell you you can come in to the club, you can join the club, but you won't have the full voting rights as all other member states have?
Well, I would say that the word concern is one of the key words here in Brussels, and we hear it from time to time on different aspects of European policy. So we do understand, of course, that EU has certain needs of being reformed itself. However, we want this process, without interfering with it, to go hand in hand or in parallel with the process of enlargement. What we are aiming at is full-fledged membership into the European Union, and this is why we are doing all the so-called homework in order to qualify to become equal partner at the table. But let me tell you, I do understand where these concerns come from. But for example, Montenegro has been for years aligned, 100% aligned with common foreign and security policy, and it continues to be so. And we actually had a different idea to become observers, regular observers at the Foreign Affairs Council, because if we are 100% aligned, why not be there without the right to vote, of course, until we become members. But what we expect is no less than full membership in the European Union.
You say that you are 100% aligned with the EU's foreign policy. Other neighbours in the Western Balkan region are not, and this is potentially why there are new ideas being brainstormed right now about potential integration. Would you be willing to be accepted initially without your full voting rights?
I would say that this is hardly acceptable, especially since, as I said, for years we have been aligned, and why we will not continue to be aligned. This is a very abstract and theoretical question. And of course, we do not want to be victims of anybody else who thinks differently. So far, Montenegro has been aligned, has given its contribution to every decision of the European Union regarding its foreign and security policy, and we actually want to contribute to it more actively and not more passively.
Another idea that is making the rounds here in Brussels is this concept of a probation time, where a new country would join and would be trialed, in a sense, for a certain amount of time, maybe months, maybe years. How would you feel about that?
Well, we've been on trial for the past 13 years. And we'll be on trial until we close all negotiation chapters. So once we close the negotiation chapters, as far as I'm concerned, the trial is over.
I'd like to ask you a little bit more about the report that the Commission has just put out. It does ask you to clamp down on some things and to advance some reforms. It includes media freedom. It includes things like more coordination between ministers, because you have quite a big government. How are you looking to address these concerns?
Well, let me tell you first that, as we said at the beginning, this is by far the best report that we have ever received. But of course, it's not perfect. If it were perfect, we wouldn't be a candidate country. We would be already in the top 5 most advanced EU member states. So, of course, some work needs to be done. But there is no chapter in which we had any sort of regress or backsliding. So in every chapter, there is moderate success, advanced success, very good success, and so on. We have been described as a fully functional democracy with government that works in a democratic and stable, politically stable environment. The parliament has its key control function. There is a media pluralism that we are living in. The civil society has full freedom of their own activities and so on and so on. But of course, there are certain recommendations that we want to take into account, not just regarding the coordination between the ministries, but also regarding showing more, even more progress in those chapters that concern the fight against organized crime and corruption. We are expecting to have a track record in final verdicts very soon until we finish the negotiations. We will, of course, update and upgrade the legislative framework that regards freedom of expression, media pluralism, and so on and so on. But as I said, all in all, I think this is a very good report, and it is basically very similar to those reports that certain countries that are now members of the EU used to get 1 or 2 or 3 years before they joined the European Union. And as I said at the beginning, this report is not just an introduction to a successful intergovernmental conference by the end of this year, but it is also a blueprint for the things that we need and want to do by the end of 26.
I'm going to ask you to perhaps wear your hat of foreign minister in answering this question. But how much of a geopolitical signal would it be if the EU were to accept Montenegro as a new country, and how much of a geopolitical cost would that be if the EU failed to do that swiftly?
Answer to both of the questions is huge. So it would be a huge gain for the European Union to finally prove that countries that do their job and that are actually willing to accede and can become members of the EU, because, as I said, it is the best policy that the EU has ever had, the very substance of the European Union. Because if the enlargement does not happen, not just with Montenegro, but also with other candidate countries, then the very concept of European Union loses its credibility. It's not European, it's not Union anymore. So with Montenegro, European Union is going to prove its very name, is going to prove its concept, is going to prove its values, and is going to prove its geopolitical status. However, if that does not happen, then it's a big loss, not just for Montenegro and candidate countries, but for the European Union, because European Union will then fail the promises and it will lose credibility. For us, it will be a devastating situation in which we are performing all the reforms and are not becoming member of the EU, and it will be a horrible signal to all other candidate countries, because then they would understand that whatever they do is vain. And this is something that we cannot accept.
Finally, Deputy Prime Minister, you come from a region where some countries have been in the waiting room for decades. Do you think it could be a pull factor? That is, could it send an important signal to the Western Balkans and encourage them to really accelerate their reforms? If Montenegro were to join, would it be a broader boost for that region of the world?
As I previously said, if Montenegro does not join, it's going to be bad for the European Union, it's going to be bad for Montenegro, and it's going to send a very bad message to other candidate countries. And it works the other way around. If Montenegro becomes the member of the EU according to the fair, strict and merit-based approach that we fully support, and that has been also envisioned in the enlargement package that we saw, then, as I said, EU confirms its credibility and it boosts its geopolitical players' status. Of course, for us, it boosts our economy, rule of law, democracy, the feeling of our citizens that actually feel like they are there and they are knocking at the door. They just need this door to be open. And again, it will be a tremendously important message to all other candidate countries, because it will prove that hard work and political dedication pays off, to put it in those terms. But it will also prove all other voices that are not very friendly towards the Western Balkans and not very friendly towards the European Union, that keep saying, whatever you do, you will not become member of the EU. So we need to prove those voices wrong.
Minister, thank you so much. All the best with your reforms to come. Thank you for joining us on 12 Minutes With.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And of course, now we're going to take a 30-minute break. But of course, stay tuned and stay with us if you're watching from home, online, on YouTube, and on Euronews.com, because we still have a lot more to come. The EU's Enlargement Commissioner will be with us. She's a moment of the hour, so you should want to stay for that. We'll also be joined by Serbia's President Aleksandar Vucic and, of course, the Prime Minister of Albania, Edi Rama. So we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Welcome back. You're live with us here on Euronews. We're broadcasting from Brussels today, from Autoworld, for this special summit about EU enlargement. My name is Maeve McMahon and I'm thrilled to be with you today. We also have a live blog all day long, giving you all the latest on all the various conversations that we've had on this stage on this very important day for the EU, and it is history. And one lady who's a part of that history is, of course, the EU Commissioner responsible for enlargement. She's having an extremely busy day, but she managed to make her way to our show today, to our Euronews Enlargement Summit. So we're thrilled to have her with us. Marta Kos, Commissioner, please make your way to the stage. And we're thrilled to have... And we're thrilled to have Maria Tadeo to join you for this conversation. Take it away, Maria.
Very much, and welcome to the Europe Conversation. My guest today is Marta Cos. She is a European Commissioner for Enlargement. Commissioner, thank you very much. Well, you're the woman of the hour, maybe the week and the month in Brussels today, which is not a bad place to be. Of course, the Commission has now put out this new report with recommendations. And you say from the get-go, when you look at enlargement, it is a geopolitical necessity, imperative. It will make us stronger and richer. How?
If we do it right. It's not, just normally that it will make us stronger and richer, but we live now in a special times when, once again, the enlargement could be the most successful policy helping European Union to answer to the challenges which occurred in the last, I would say, 1 year or even earlier when the war in Ukraine started. Meaning that I see enlargement as much more than just the enlargement. It is really the possibility for making our European Union stronger, as you have said. It is the possibility that we, if we do it right, do finally unification of Europe, meaning bringing, if we succeed, all the 10 countries, you had the nice flags here, if we bring all of them in, then Europe will be united for the first time in the history. And this is somehow today, again, we are going back to why the European Union has been established. It is, again, a peace project, very important. What is happening in Ukraine, bringing Ukraine and also Moldova, it is about securing peace. It is about freedom. It is about prosperity and security.
And of course, language is very important, and I noticed that you said this is about unifying Europe, and it's interesting because many leaders say it shouldn't be enlargement, it should be called the unification of Europe, which is, again, there's a lot of power behind that word. But I wonder, however, how do you go, and now if we can go into the specifics, when you look at a report and a piece of paper, how do you turn that into a reality? How do you make that leap?
Oh, you said a piece of paper. There are hundreds and hundreds of pages and reports, and many people have been working on this for us. This is really a very responsible document showing the facts. But generally, I could say that this is the proof that enlargement is happening. For the first time in the last years, the last time we have enlarged, it was 2013 with Croatia, and today the possibility, the realistic possibility exists that in the next years we will get new members. We have two clearly front runners or leaders in the process. We have two other countries we have where actually the development or progress has been huge in the last year. Albania and Montenegro, and of course then Ukraine and Moldova. We shouldn't forget all the others. So, but now it is a kind of, I have to say, that this is also happening because the European Commission or Union has changed the attitude towards the enlargement. It hasn't been in the plan in the last years. Now with this last Commission it is. We're also getting the support in the European Parliament for the enlargement, and generally also the majority of the citizens of the EU are supporting.
You say something has changed around enlargement. I think everyone in Brussels can feel that there's something in the air, there's new momentum. Obviously, you've taken this as a big responsibility. So can we say you view incorporating more countries as your biggest responsibility, but also if this doesn't happen by the end of this Commission, would you consider that as perhaps a personal failure, but also a European failure?
For my personal, yes, it's not just in my hands, but still, this is, I'm saying that I have the best job in the world possible. Who has the possibility to bring new members to the EU? I have, with all my team. So this is, but also huge responsibility. And I take it very seriously, both sides, not just towards the candidates, but also towards the member states. Why? If we want to make it stronger, as you have started our conversation, we have to make it right, meaning that we have to also consider that there are some concerns of the member states.
And at the beginning, you said there are two countries that are the front runners. That would be Albania and Montenegro. Then you mentioned Moldova and Ukraine. Are we to understand, and I don't want to make this a cliche, that then Serbia, North Macedonia, you view as, also we should include Georgia at some point in that conversation, you view now as not doing as well? You would put them at the bottom of the rank?
No, I'm not ranking this. So what I see the results, we have in this enlargement report, we have measured the progress, 1 year progress, and general preparedness. To some extent, Serbia is more prepared than the countries I have mentioned before, but there was no progress, or it was even backsliding. So this is what is very much important. It can be ready to some extent in some chapters of the negotiations, ready more than the others, but we have to really see the progress, especially on the rule of law, anti-corruption, media freedom, academic freedom, and these are actually the areas, the last 3 points where Serbia was backsliding. But still, I'm extending my arm in the sense of we want to see democratic Serbia in the EU, but democratic Serbia. And I'm happy that all the protests since November last year have shown that there is a democratic potential and that people want to go on the way of democracy, and we are supporting this.
And I want to unpack what you said, because I wanted to talk about Serbia after, but now that you brought it up, what does that mean? You say there is backsliding, and it's happened in many critical areas, going from civil rights to freedom of expression in the media. You also say, I want to see a democratic Serbia. If I'm the president of Serbia and I'm hearing this, I would go, well, it's going to be very rough. That means this is not going to move.
You will have it.
Because he would disagree.
You will have him later. Oh, I'd like to talk to him, and I will meet him. I have invited him for dinner tonight. It will be for sure interesting exchange. But I stay behind every word which is in the report. Why, especially? Many areas. One of them is never before have been so many journalists jailed in Serbia as in the last year. The judiciary system is very much under the influence of the president. Nothing is happening in the enlargement process without the president. It is not right. And I could go on. CFSP alignment. So, we expect from our candidates that they align in the trend, their foreign and security policy with the European one. Serbia is really on the last place. So we have 4 members or 4 countries, candidates from the Western Balkans, having 100% fulfillment of the CFSP alignment. Ukraine is 99, Moldova is 98, Serbia is 61. 1 point. The other point is, I can understand that President Vucic is going also to Moscow and to China. But we notice this. I can understand, I come from this area, I know about the relations between Serbia and Russia. On the other hand, being supportive to a regime, Russian regime, which is killing people in Ukraine, not accepting the sanctions which the EU is having against Russia. There are things which we really cannot tolerate anymore. And what I think is also not good, and it is mentioned in the report, is that especially the Serbian politicians and media, which are then following his lead, should really stop accusing us, the European Union, that we are behind the protests in Serbia. Really, we are not. So this is clearly a lie. And there are many, many lies I could go on. And this should stop immediately.
Look, you make it very clear that you think the situation is serious and your words are severe. Just to play devil advocate for a second and then we can move on. What the Serbian authorities would say is that we don't apply EU sanctions because we're not a member of the EU. If we joined, we would be aligned. They also say, you know, we go to Russia, but we also have a relationship with Ukraine. But what I understand is that you're saying, I hear those arguments, but if you want to join, then you need to make choices. You want to see choices.
Yes, and it is a very important geopolitical choice. You know, we all have to make geopolitical choices. There are also some member states, for instance, who are suffering or will have problems when we say that we want to get out of the energy dependence on Russia. We have done this quite a lot, you know, when the war started in Ukraine. 60% of gas in Europe was imported from Russia. Now we are down to 5%. Of course, you know, we have to buy also energy which is more expensive. But why do we do this? Because we punish the system who has started this unfair war and supporting Ukraine. But not everything is negative in Serbia. I don't want to give this impression. There have been small steps like media legislation has been adopted. Now they are in the finishing line of the very important Council on the Electronic Media or voting register. So there are some things, and this is right so, and we are supportive, but much, much more needs to be done.
And you made that clear. Now let's move on perhaps to Ukraine, because it's the other big country. Obviously, no country has applied for EU membership in these conditions. This is a country that says it can reform deeply, but also fight a war at the same time. In your report, you say that they are committed, and you see that they are committed. You also say, and this to me really, it's very important. You said the technicalities to open up the clusters, they are ready, and it should happen in November. That's a very bold statement to make, but you know the issue is the Hungarian veto. So this needs a political short circuit. Who's going to do it?
You know, I'm a bold person, and we should deliver. We are, me and my team, we are pushing the candidates, they have to deliver. But we should deliver too. And we say it is merit-based. It goes both sides. Meaning, if, and it is not about Ukraine, I'm full of admiration what they are delivering, you know, while the bombs are falling on the country. And the same for Moldova. But they have delivered, so we will be by November ready to open all the clusters. And then one of the member states is opposing.
It's Hungary, and they have said we're not going to change.
Yeah, but you know, the same country, the same member states has given a green light to give candidate status to Ukraine, has given a green light to start negotiations, but now it is blocking. This is not fair, and this is not how I see the European solidarity and geopolitical need. But of course, I'm sure we will find the solution. You know, I was telling today at the press conference, not Ukraine, not Moldova, they don't need Orban to do the reforms. They can do the reforms on the way. So perhaps we see it more too black and white. We can only go on if we open the cluster or clusters. No, we can go on also without opening formally the clusters. We can do the technical work I'm speaking about in the working groups, and when the conditions will be met, then we can open and close clusters.
I'm happy you say that, because that is the core of the story. Ultimately, that is the issue. What you're saying is the technical work has been done. The cluster should open. The negotiation needs to move forward now. But it's clear by now that the technicalities are not going to fix this, because it's November and nothing has happened. It's almost a wasted year. The only way forward is political. So what does that look like? Is it the German Chancellor saying to the Hungarian Prime Minister, you need to do it? Is it António Costa saying we no longer do unanimity? In some ways, we just need a majority. What is the political short circuit that is going to change this? Because only politics can change it now.
You know, we have to consider that the accession process is one part is the technical part I'm responsible for. The other part has to do with the political dimension and dynamics in the member states. And you said that nothing has happened. This is not the truth, but on the outside world, it's the impression that nothing has happened, but we have been working really a lot. For instance, especially with Ukraine and Moldova, the screening process has been done in the record time. Also dealing with the member states. So you have mentioned Marc and Costa and all the others. Whatever it would help, everybody should, and we are speaking also to Mr. Orban. So, you know, I believe that the member states are the one who can push, and the member states and all we together, we will find a solution. In the past, this is the beauty of the European Union, that we have been able to find solutions to the most impossible problems in the past.
And you get creative. There's a lot of questions, but I'm being told, you know,
creative is a good word. Yes,
it's always a way to do it in Europe. And I wonder, just very briefly, however, because you know I could talk to you for an hour now, but when you look at unanimity, you obviously say we need to find a way around this because otherwise the process won't end. The other big pillar of internal reform of the EU is the countries that join, the member states would argue, they need to be aligned with us. We need to make sure that the new members are not going to make life more difficult. So how is the EU at 27 going to be managed in a better, more efficient way, when we see at 27 is complicated, at 21? Would you say, for example, if a new country joins, they need to be put to the test and they need to be put on probation, maybe for 5-10 years? We need to see how they behave before they become a full member.
In order to fulfill the criteria, what you have said at the beginning, that we have to be stronger, this is the most important. So there are two important points. First is that the member state, the candidate countries really have to be ready. They really have to go through the whole process and being ready, also applying all the so-called Copenhagen criteria, having a strong economy, institutions, and so on. On the other side, we also have to be ready, and this is the parallel process. So the Commission will, in the next weeks, put out the results of the so-called pre-enlargement review, where we have to see inside us what we have to do, that we will be ready to function also when we will get some new members on board. You know, my country, Slovenia, joined the EU in 2004. 10 countries joined. It was 90 million people. And we survived. Now we are speaking about Albania, 2.78 million, and we are speaking about Montenegro. It is a kind of 600,000 people. It's like Antwerp. So,
but very nice weather.
Very nice weather and very nice people and very nice coast and mountains and everything, of course. But should really this a bit more than 3 million new citizens be such a big problem? Of course not. But I can understand the concerns of the member states, of the citizens, and that we have to talk about it. So what I expect now, and I hope that we will do this together, all the stakeholders, to discuss about the future of the European Union, and it could also be that we speak about the decision-making process.
And this idea that we hear now, yes, you're a member, but you don't have a veto, some rights,
no,
yes.
No.
Do you like the idea of Class A and Class B members?
No, I'm strictly against, but this is my personal opinion. No, we cannot have two-class members. You know, when Slovenia joined the EU, we have been equal like Germany. You know, we were so happy at that time, and France and so on. I'm exaggerating a bit, but no, we have to enable that all the members will be equal. But already exists, you know, through the accession treaties, we can define transitional periods. For instance, Poland has gotten now, you know, people speak about the danger of the agriculture from Ukraine. You know, when Poland joined, it was the same issue with their agriculture. So Poland has gotten 20 years of the transitional period. We have transitional periods. We have different areas where we really can talk about to enable a full integration and really strong EU.
And just as we reach to the end, there are 2 points that I would like to clarify. One is, you said every word that we put out in the report, we stand by it, and we think this is a good report. Obviously, with Ukraine, you say they have made a lot of progress, but you also point out to the idea of rule of law and corruption needs to be tackled further. As you can see, the government of President Zelenskyy, he spoke with us, he said, I haven't fully seen it, but I'm not sure I fully agree with that description. What did you mean by that? It's been interpreted as very negative. Is it that negative?
No, not at all. But you know, the report for Ukraine and any other country is more than 100 pages. And some people have read just a few lines. It is really good to see the whole report. And for Ukraine, it is clearly a huge development, a huge progress. But there are some points, and this is nearly for every candidate country. Just to remind you, why are we doing this enlargement reports? It is, we do this to point out what is running well, and to see where we need some improvements. And one of the areas where we see the danger in Ukraine is, and we have experienced this on July 22nd, where actually a law has been adopted which was making their two main anti-corruption agencies less independent. And this is not good. You know, it is very, very important that the country, not just Ukraine, is having independent anti-corruption institutions. And this was a clear backsliding. And this shouldn't be the case. The law has been repaired, not yet to 100%, so we are still working on this, and this is why we have put this into the report.
And so in all of this, you still say the European Union is going to be stronger with them inside?
Yes, once they will join, but they will not be able to join unless they will be prepared. So this is a circle we have to follow.
Just very quickly, because I think we have a responsibility on this as journalists. Georgia, the language that you have used is, at least to my knowledge, the most severe I have ever seen in a report like this. If I understand what you say, where you talk about massive and very serious backsliding on everything, you talk about authorities that no longer seem to be interested in this process. If I read that, the way that I would interpret it is, this is the end of the road. But at the same time, there is a people, and we all know this, who are prepared to do almost anything to now join the European Union. How do you bridge this gap?
You're right. This is the worst enlargement report for any candidate country ever, but rightly so. So what their government is doing and lying to their people, they are saying that they are bringing Georgia closer to the EU. They are bringing Georgia away from the EU. So it is a clear backsliding on many areas, especially on the fundamentals, the rule of law, anti-corruption, media freedom. You know, the government, what is the government doing? The government is not following the interests of their own people.
What happens to the people of Georgia, however, because they say they want in very clearly. Is there a way to bridge this gap?
You know, that's why the only option is that the government of Georgia will revise many laws who are clearly anti-European. They should stop putting their political opponents or journalists in jail. They really should start not oppressing anymore the organizations of civil society. You know, we have difficulties to support them because as long as they hear we would love to support them, they are in the danger that they will be put in jail. So, yes, it is clearly Georgia still a candidate country, but for the Commission only on the paper. And we will do everything to support media and especially civil society organizations.
And just lastly, by 2030, the end of this mandate, what does the European Union look like? Is it 29? Is it 30? Who's in it?
Oh, I don't know. I can't see in the stars, but I will work endlessly and tirelessly on this project in which I really believe. For the first time after many years, the prospects of the enlargement are there. How many countries it will be, it is not that much important. Important is that actually we will get stronger, as you have said, and that we will make our union of values and democracy bigger. And I will close with this, if I may. You know, in the past, the European Union has always been capable to include the countries which have been, for instance, Portugal, Spain, Greece. We included them into the EU after the end of the dictatorships. After the Berlin Wall fell, we have been able to include, for the first time, countries from the Eastern Europe. And now we are again in this historical moment. So I am positive there will be some new members. How many? Let's meet in 2030. No, 2029, because my mandate ended in 2029. So we have to meet before December the 1st, 29. Then we can talk about the numbers. Okay.
We'll invite you again in 2029.
Okay.
Commissioner Kos, thank you so much for this important conversation in Euronews. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria Tadeo, for that. And of course, to the European Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Kos, for that fascinating interview. Thank you so much for being with us. So now we have heard the view from the European Commission. But what about the European Parliament? To get some more views, Euronews had the opportunity to speak to 27 MEPs and ask them what they felt. Take a look.
Is that what we need?
We need it to be a reality.
Enlargement is crucial.
It's not necessary.
With Europe at a turning point, enlargement is more than just ambition.
A normal process of unification of Europe.
It's a very, let's say, delicate question.
It's a defining choice, not only for the Union's future itself.
Enlargement is our security guarantee.
It really can be a win-win-win situation.
But for those who want to come in too.
We think about them, we consider them.
They are our brothers, but they have to clean up their houses.
The European Union is the best alternative that they have.
A defining choice that questions.
Why does the European establishment always think about getting bigger? It's like a European empire.
It's about all peoples around one table of European nations.
It's a defining choice for Europe's security.
Enlargement of Europe is extremely important now when we are facing external enemies.
Either we invite the candidate countries to join our family, or they will be invited by somebody else who wants to fight against us.
For Europe's democracy.
We have our own freedom, so we are based on values.
We want them to be true democracies. We want them to fight corruption.
They need to respect minority rights and human rights.
Comply to the Copenhagen criteria with the rule of law.
For Europe's economy.
It's a big boost to economy. New members, new industries.
Many workers from Eastern Europe ended up underpaid and without any protection. It cannot happen again. It must not happen again.
For Europe's voice.
It's important for the European Union to keep that level of influence in the Western Balkans.
The more members we have in the European Union, the less each member state can directly influence political decision-making.
You give part of your sovereignty, of course, but you get a seat at the table.
For Europe's unity.
Our motto is united in diversity. Diversity is always positive.
Learn to live with one another, learn to understand one another in harmony and in peace.
Peace, security, stability, and prosperity.
Is the start of a new show that we're going to launch, because here at Euronews we're very ambitious people and we're always thinking, how can we make it better? So this is a new show that we will premiere on Wednesdays on Euronews. Every night you'll be able to watch it. It's called The Ring, and it brings together two different MEPs to have two different perspectives and two views. Obviously, as you know, Euronews is committed to showing all views in debate, and this is what this show will be about. And today, as I mentioned, we premiere the first episode live with you, and it will be hosted, of course, by my colleague, Maeve. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Maria. Hello there and welcome to The Ring, our brand new talk show here on Euronews. Each week, two elected members of the European Parliament will go face to face on some of the pressing issues that they're debating inside the European hemicycle in Brussels and Strasbourg. And the tone for this show, The Ring, has been set by the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen.
Europe is in a fight for a continent that is whole and at peace, a fight for our values and our democracies.
But what kind of fight and what kind of values, what kind of future do we want here? That is exactly what we will explore on this brand new show, The Ring. And the topic, of course, for this very first edition is EU enlargement. And we're thrilled to be joined by two members of the European Parliament, David McAllister and Marc Botenga. Let's get to know them more in this clip.
David McAllister, veteran member of the European Parliament, Chair of Foreign Affairs, Vice President of the centre-right EPP Group, a leading voice in European and transatlantic affairs. And when enlargement talks with Albania and North Macedonia were delayed, he didn't hold back. The EU failed to show leadership, courage and strategic vision, he said. Marc Botenga, Belgian MEP. A fierce defender of workers' rights and public services, he's one of the European Parliament's strongest critics of austerity and corporate power. He voted against the EU's economic aid package for the Western Balkans, warning it comes loaded with neoliberal conditions that, in his words, would deepen the crisis instead of solving it.
So, Marc Botenga and David McAllister, welcome to the stage.
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel about being our very first contenders here on the ring?
Lovely.
Very excited.
Yes?
Very.
Well, you're so very, very welcome. We have, of course, a lot to discuss. So let's kick off with yourself, David McAllister. Croatia was the last country to join back in 2013. Who will be the next to join and by when?
Well, there are 10 candidate countries, and I'm very sure one of the 10 will be. In the moment, Montenegro is the front runner, then comes Albania. But apart from these 10, there are also some developments in the High North. There are new debates in Iceland, in Norway, and even in Greenland, who perhaps might also want to join the European Union.
Indeed, as we're hearing, EU enlargement, the momentum is indeed there. Is it for you? Are you in favour of EU enlargement, Marc Botenga?
Well, I'm not against or in favor of EU enlargement. I think we need to see why we do it and what we want to obtain, what's going to be the consequences. Because there have been consequences for working class people of previous enlargements. And we've seen that today as well. You know, there have been protests of farmers against liberalization of trade, for example, with Ukraine. There have been victims. We've seen social dumping practices that have made people very skeptical of these enlargements. So what I would say is we need to get our house in order socially before we risk having the same effects again.
Can we afford EU enlargement?
The history of the European integration has always been the history of enlargement. We started with 6, we became 9, 12, 15, 25, 27, even 28 members. There are 48, 49 countries in Europe, and 10 out of these want to become members of the European Union, and we should support these countries in their aspirations. But of course, in the end, all the necessary criteria need to be met, politically, financially, economically, that's clear. But I am happy to see that further countries want to join our family of nations because they share our values and they believe that they are stronger and better off together with us.
And we saw the so-called report cards or progress reports coming out today from the European Commission this week in Brussels. What are your views on them?
Well, obviously we've received these hundreds of pages just recently, so we're not going to pretend any one of us, I think, to have read or studied them in depth. However, one thing I looked at, and which I'm disappointed by, is that, of course, we know this is no longer just a merit-based process. I mean, there's a geopolitical dimension to it now. No one's going to deny that. But what I have seen is that over the last years, I've seen a lot of protests from trade unions, International Trade Union Confederation, European Trade Union Confederation, saying there's a clear backsliding on working class democracy in Ukraine. There have been new laws. There's been even the Secretary General of the Federation of Trade Unions of Ukraine that's been put under house arrest, right? And the Commission doesn't seem to take that seriously. And I think, you know, you already have a martial law and you're attacking civil society in this way. That needs to be on the agenda. And what I'm seeing is that we're abandoning basically the criteria just because of geopolitics.
Is that a point that you could address, David McAllister? Many feel that the EU is not working for them, those that are in the club already.
There are 10 candidate countries in the moment, but the big difference between Ukraine and the other 9 is Ukraine is going through a fully fledged war, a Russian war of aggression. And of course, you need to always consider under which enormous pressure and challenges Ukraine lies. Yes, Ukraine is still far away from meeting all the necessary EU criteria. Ukraine is on the way, it's a marathon. And of course, also the Commission has been very outspoken in also criticizing what is not going well in Ukraine. But my impression is that the Ukrainian government usually responds in a positive way to the criticism coming from the Commission and the European Parliament. That's why we need to also work on social standards and workers' rights in Ukraine, just like in any other candidate country. But please, we need to bear in mind this country is under attack by a vicious regime in the Russian Federation.
There, Marc, Botenga?
If you are under attack, is your priority to crack down on trade unionists? Is your priority then to say we need to liberalize the energy sector, the banking sector? No, I mean, your priority should be to bring back peace, to get back your sovereignty and so on. So this argument of, war in order to justify social repression, I think is just out of scope.
Well, Marc, I'm very sorry, I didn't say that. I said that, of course, Ukraine has to also meet all the necessary criteria. And there are a lot of things where Ukraine still has to do a lot of homework. But in general, we need to just consider under which enormous challenge they are fighting a war against Russia on the one hand, and on the other hand, preparing to join the European Union. That is very impressive and that deserves respect. But once again, I am not arguing, I'm not defending this. In the end, they will have to meet all the criteria, including the social criteria you have mentioned.
So we agree being disappointed by the Commission.
What about internal reforms, David McAllister? What kind of internal reforms does the EU need to do? Its own homework, perhaps?
Well, the one thing is that further countries will at one day probably join our European Union. It depends, of course, when. On the other hand, we need to prepare in the meantime. We are operating with a set of rules and institutions which stem from a time where we are 9, 12, 15 members. We have to reform, we have to get ready for enlargement ourselves. That means we need to strengthen the European Parliament. We have to, in the Council, introduce further qualified majority voting. Unanimity is something which comes from the time where we were 6 or 9 or 12 member states. It doesn't work with 27, it will not work with 28, 29 or 30. And also we need to discuss, can this system continue that every single member state has an own commissioner? Already the commission in the moment is rather large.
I'm sure that's something you'd agree with too, Marc Botenga.
Well, the Commission is rather large, this is one thing, but what I would be saying is if we want, first of all, to avoid a social, massive negative social impact on our societies, there's a number of rules, European rules, that we need to revise in a very ambitious way. And I'm thinking about subcontracting. I'm thinking about posted workers. I'm thinking about pluriactivity. And I'm thinking about letterbox companies. Because if we do not tackle this socially, we're going to have a massive backlash. And we've seen these protests. We've seen protests of farmers in Poland and Italy. We've seen protests of truckers from Poland and the Slovak Republic.
But what about the backlash from countries in the Western Balkans who've been waiting for so long to enter the
Absolutely.
Union?
And I really understand the frustration of the Western Balkans and of these countries. Because indeed, they've been waiting for a long time, other countries perhaps even longer, and they feel disrespected. They feel disrespected when they see, that certain other countries get a pass.
And now they're hearing about this potential probation period. What are your thoughts on this?
I beg your pardon?
Like not having a fully fledged membership, a trial period?
Well, in the moment,
being allowed in, but not having a veto?
Well, until now, we have argued you are either in or out. You're a fully fledged member of the European Union or not. I think that we have to get away from this black and white debate, and that means that the solution is the gradual integration of candidate countries into the European Union. So we begin with the gradual integration in the single market and in other important policy fields, and then the next step is the EU membership. And after EU membership, the next step is then to join the core zone of the European Union. That means the Euro and the Schengen cooperation area. I think that is the way. And also we need to perhaps think out of the box, how can we address the concerns of some of our member states that additional members might at the beginning be hampering the further integration process. But I mean, we've managed that until now, and I'm very sure with candidate countries 28, 29 and 30 joining, we will be able to do so.
You agree with that, or do you think it could be completely dysfunctional?
Well, it could obviously be completely dysfunctional. That's why I'm saying, we need the social guarantees, very clearly. We need upwards convergence, not a downward spiral of dumping on the one hand. And secondly, if we do not involve the people, if we think this is all going to be decided in Brussels, in Strasbourg, there will be a backlash democratically as well, because people will not take it. People will be like, hey, my working life, my salary is being affected. And so that is something we need to deal with.
I don't always necessarily agree with Marc, but on this point, he's right. Yes, indeed, we have to convince our citizens, we have to convince the people, but the social standards which are so important to you, and they're just as important to me. I think one way to guarantee these social standards in the candidate countries is that we go through a thorough enlargement process, because in the end, all the criteria need to be met, and that's why enlargement is a huge opportunity, not only for the people, but also for the businesses and the employers and the employees in these countries.
Interesting, on this very first edition of The Ring, you're starting to agree with each other, because politicians, it's all about building compromises, of course.
A German Christian Democrat and a Belgian socialist, I mean, we're wide apart usually.
And now it is time, in fact, to show our viewers a little taste of what it's like inside the hemicycle, when, as some of you may have seen, MEPs get the chance to pose questions to each other, sometimes very provocative. David McAllister, please start with your question for Marc Botenga.
Marc, if I understood you correctly, you're rather enlargement skeptical and you want to not accelerate the process. You believe that we need to take our time. On the other hand, grey zones will exist. Grey zones will be created, and China and the Russian Federations are just there to fill these grey zones. Why do you do that?
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, I would send you back the question. You know, Russia and European Parliament, we've criticized that very long, that Russia thinks in terms of spheres of influence, you know, and they try to influence other countries to do what they want, to copy their model or impose their model. The way I hear you speak sometimes about enlargement is very similar. Where I'm saying, should the European Union then enter in this logic of spheres of influence? I don't think we should. You know, and I don't think we should be interfering in other countries. They have their democratic processes, their local evolutions, and we should respect this. And this might indeed end up in enlargement. You know, I'm not principally against. But what we should not be doing is copying a model of countries that we criticize.
Marc Botenga, you now have the opportunity to pose a question to David McAllister.
Well, let me come back to what we were discussing before. I mean, you said that indeed social convergence upward is important. Then I'm going to ask you, why is EPP systematically opposing, you know, ambitious social proposals that could basically end or limit social dumping? I'm thinking, for example, of banning subcontracting below 1 or 2 levels. I'm thinking of, for example, forcing letterbox companies to have real activity in the country they're officially based. Think of Slovenia, think of a number of other countries. Why doesn't EPP take that social agenda seriously, aside when we're discussing very abstractly about enlargement?
Okay, thank you for your question. Not directly related to the enlargement countries, I understand.
But it's probably close to your heart, of course.
Well, look, first of all, the EPP has always been the leading party when it comes to further developing the social market economy. We are not supporters of free capitalism. We support the social market economy, which Ludwig Erhard, for instance, in Germany, created, and this is our model for Europe. And this includes, of course, social standards, workers' rights, labor rights. We have always been at the forefront of this, and I strongly believe, by the way, we also need a strong social pillar within the European Union, because we need the citizens on board, and the European integration project should not be an elitist project of the well-off, but of all, and this, of course, includes the hard-working people we have in Europe. That's why we can have a more detailed discussion on these matters, but I have to add one point. Marc, I do not agree what you said, that EU enlargement is interfering in third countries. These countries have voluntarily taken the decision to join our family because they believe in democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. And I will always support countries and governments and parliaments who want to go exactly this way.
I will
answer that one.
Let me just reply to that. That is a very naive vision, and you know you don't share that, of how these processes go. You know, the European Union has been very active in sponsoring NGOs and media to influence public debate, you know, in these countries. We've done this in Ukraine, we've done it in Georgia, we've done it in many countries. And you can say this is legitimate, and we could argue about this, saying it is legitimate, it's not legitimate. But the other side, you know, the Russians that want their sphere of influence are doing very similar things. What I'm saying is that we need to listen to social movements over there and not prioritize our own corporate interests. Because what we're seeing today, honestly, if you see the Finnish minister going to Georgia to protest with the protesters, you can say, you know, if a Russian would do that, we would consider it unacceptable interference, and rightly so. If we're doing it, we're saying, well, you know, it's a support for democracy. So this thin line, and there we need to be very clear that there might be double standards in the way we look at things.
Well, Marc, I think here we have some clear differences between the two of us. When it comes to interfering in candidate countries, I wouldn't at first think of EU member states. These countries are being flooded by malign Russian influence.
Absolutely.
Fake news, propaganda. They are trying to destabilize democracy. Marc, I think the socialists, your party, you should deal more with this horrific Russian foreign malign influence we have in Europe.
Just to make clear, because otherwise we're going to get some problems with colleagues, I'm not from the socialist group. Huh?
Well, how do I call you then?
SND, you said with the left group, but okay, I mean, just to, in order for our socialist colleagues not to get a heart attack.
Okay, well, what are you then?
With the left group.
You're just a lefty. Okay,
so
well, when
it's like
Marc the leftist. Okay.
I'm glad you're getting to know each other here on the ring. Let's perhaps bring in another voice on this very important discussion of EU enlargement that has made a political comeback. That is the voice of the Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who spoke at the Euronews Enlargement Summit here in Brussels, and he said that Donald Trump is supporting Ukraine in becoming a member of the European Union, that Trump understands that this is the will of the Ukrainian people. But my question is, what do you think of this statement? And do we really need the approval of the White House for this kind of thing?
The brave women and men in Ukraine are not only defending their territorial sovereignty and integrity every day, they are also defending our European values. They are defending the European peace and security architecture. And if there's one people in Europe who has shown how they committed they are to the European integration progress, then it's the brave women and men from Ukraine. They deserve all our support.
Marc Botenga.
Well, I think Donald Trump has launched one of the most aggressive attacks on Ukraine's sovereignty we have seen over the last years. I mean, you've seen, obviously, the horrible war of Russia, you know, occupying, what is it, one-fifth of the country. But what has Donald Trump done? He's come saying, you know, you want peace, I can guarantee that, but in exchange, I want your natural resources. Now, that is a direct attack on the economic sovereignty of the Ukrainian people. So I don't think he should be giving lessons on what sovereignty means.
And what about Moldova? We also heard from Maia Sandu, the president of Moldova, saying that she also one day wants to be a member of the European Union. Can the EU afford a poor country like Moldova? David McAllister.
Moldova, who's ever been there, knows great people, great country, and they are on their way. I urge the Council to open the accession negotiations with Moldova now in autumn. They are waiting for this desperately, and the Moldovans have shown their European commitment despite all the aggressive malign Russian influence. The people in Moldova stood strong and voted 3 times in favor of a pro-European orientation at the referendum, at the presidential elections, and just most recently at the parliamentary elections.
Marc Botenga?
Why not? Let's talk. I mean, I'm in favor of talks. Moldova, as you know, is not an easy situation with the Transnistrian situation, so that will need to be solved. Let's not pretend that doesn't exist. But we always need to keep talking. What I'm saying is let's keep talking with respect of local democracy. You know, let's keep talking and let's not accelerate things beyond that in the hope to, you know, eat them up quicker than the others, because that's not what Europe should be.
Well, now we've heard the view of the MEPs. I'm curious also to get the view of the European public, to hear how they feel about EU enlargement. We've been digging into the latest Eurobarometer survey, which is, of course, the data accumulated by the European Commission that tests the temperature, if you like, of the European public. And according to the latest data, 56% of Europeans are in favour of EU enlargement, 39% show mistrust, and 14% think their country would not benefit at all. The pros of those polled were that the EU could benefit from larger markets, there'd be more work and more skilled labour, and the cons, many said, the cost for the taxpayers, the risk of corruption, organised crime and terrorism, and also uncontrolled migration. Marc Botenga, a reaction to that data?
I think if you look at the Eurobarometer, one of the very interesting points is as well that most people don't believe they will benefit themselves from enlargement. You know, they say, okay, why not the idea? The idea is nice, and the idea, this is also why in the EU bubble it's so, you speak about enlargement because it's nice, like Europe expanding. But many people are afraid and know they will not benefit. We've seen massive population losses also in member states that joined later, Bulgaria, Romania, the Baltic countries. And that is why, and I'm coming back to this, if we do not have the strong internal social measures, and apparently EPP would be open to that, so that's the news of the day, then we cannot do this enlargement.
It is a valid point. I mean, people are scared. They're scared for their future. They're concerned about the cost of living, and they're getting selfish, therefore.
The positive thing about this poll is that a majority of Europeans are in favor of enlargement, but I take very seriously that 39% are against. And we have to work on this. We have to improve our communication. We have to explain to our citizens that further enlargement, if we do it properly, I am not advocating enlargement for enlargement. I am advocating an enlargement process which is merit-based, where each country is individually judged, and that in the end, all the necessary criteria are met. That is a long process. It's a marathon. And by the way, enlargement is a regatta, not a convoy. Each country needs to be individually judged. But in the end, if these countries, with their economies, join, it is beneficial for both sides because it means new markets, new business opportunities, and the enlargement until now has shown, especially the big enlargement in 2004, that it was beneficial for everyone in Europe.
Was the Big Bang enlargement successful in your view, Marc Botenga?
Well, once again, I mean, I've said it before, many people in, older member states, France, Germany as well, Belgium, saw this as an opening for social dumping, which was reality for many people. And many people in the more eastern, the more newer member states left their countries, felt forced. I said Bulgaria, I said Romania, the Baltic countries that have seen a lot of people quitting in the hope of finding a job somewhere. Now, I'm not against that as such, but it did create structural, or aggravate perhaps structural problems within the European, let's say, the subcontinent of Europe. And if we're going to do that again with now one, at least very big member states, demographically, economically, as Ukraine, we might have that in a much, much stronger version. And look at how many Germans reacted now that suddenly, when President Zelenskyy opened the borders for young men, and you had, 100,000 young men saying immediately, we want to quit Ukraine, how that reaction provoked German citizens.
I think the solution to the problem of social dumping is what we have seen in other cases, transitional periods. That we go from one extreme immediately to the other, but we have these transitional agreements, these transitional periods is for the free movement of labor, as we had with some Eastern European countries after 2004.
Dave McAllister, what about some of the cons there that we listed?
Pardon?
What about some of the cons there that we listed, the concerns that Europeans have with enlargement, be that organised crime or uncontrolled migration, the fact that it's their taxpayers' money that will have to go to
and absolutely, these concerns are legitimate. We need to
how do you address them?
We take this seriously. We need to better communicate. Marta Kos today said, as Enlargement Commissioner, we're in this together, and it is our duty, not only in the candidate countries, but also in the 27 member states, to convince our citizens that this is beneficial. And I named the arguments that we are stronger and better off together, and that we have much more and greater business opportunities. And in general, I would see there are 48, 49 countries in Europe. 27 are in the European Union. But the European project has always been open to all countries who lie geographically in Europe, who share our values, and are ready to go for a very challenging negotiation process. That's where we are.
And the EU does need a success story when it comes to EU enlargement. They need to make some announcements soon, especially after Jean-Claude Juncker, as Commission President, said there will be no enlargement under my 5 years.
Okay, but I'm not particularly concerned with the PR needs of the European Union. That is a different thing. What I do
but otherwise it could break up.
Yeah, but we need to watch out with the communication aspect of it. Because I've heard this on many things. Also development cooperation, because it always has the same undertone of like, we're doing great things. We're just not explaining them well enough to the people. I think people have real concerns. People really see an impact on their salaries. They see on their current lives, and we need to take that seriously and adapt policies, not just adapt, PR strategies. So I think this is really important. And secondly, let's on the other hand not stigmatize potential member states, because organized crime is not something that is limited to a particular country or region. I think many countries today in the European Union are affected by organized crime.
Mark, if we had applied your attitude in 2001, 2002, 2003, the enlargement in 2004 wouldn't have been possible. And I'm happy to live in a Europe. I would have been happy. I'm happy to live in a European Union where Poland, the Baltic countries, the Czech Republic, and others are also fully fledged members. The Europe is more than old Western Europe. Europe is Western, Central, and Eastern Europe. And I think that if these countries, these candidate countries, are on their way to fulfill all the necessary criteria, and I have been the rapporteur for one of the candidate countries for 5 years. I know what hard work it is. We should give them all the support, and you are playing with fears because all these arguments you have mentioned today, I remember were exactly the same ones I heard before 2004 when the 10 Eastern and 7 European countries joined, and also when Romania and Bulgaria joined in 2007 and Croatia in 2013.
And we didn't deal with them.
Pardon?
Sorry, that's the point. We didn't deal with them. And this created fears. This created also a backlash in certain of these countries because we didn't take them seriously. And that is the point.
I will give you a good example. Croatia joined in 2013, and 12 years later, Croatia is not only a fully fledged member of the European Union, but also a fully fledged member of the Schengen area and introduced the Eurozone.
How many Croatians are forced to leave their country to get a decent work in Germany? Croatians now feel forced. You know that German courses are big business in Croatia because there's not enough investment in the Croatian productive economy. And so this is something that the Croatians struggle with. And I want to listen to the Bulgarian trade unions, to the Romanian trade unions, to the Polish trade unions that are saying we are not getting out of this what we as workers deserve.
And here we're getting a real glimpse of what the debates inside the European hemicycle are like. That was the view of Marc Botenga, the view of David McAllister. I'd like to hear your view. Please reach out to us here, thering@euronews.com. But before we come to a close, we have a bit of a rapid buzzer round for our two contenders. I will pose a very short question and I require a very short answer. Just yes or no. Marc Botenga, is the future of the European Union bright? Yes or no?
If we fundamentally change policies, yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Are opt-outs a good idea for joining member states? Opt-outs, are they a good idea?
Opt-outs?
Opt-outs. So, for example, you become a member of the European Union, but not of the euro currency? Opt-outs.
Opt-outs, oh, right, yes.
Are opt-outs a good idea?
We've already seen this. Can be an option.
Should Turkey join the EU one day, Marc Botenga?
I think for the moment, neither the EU nor Turkey is asking that.
Yes or no?
Under the given circumstances, no.
Should countries with anti-LGBTQI+ laws be blocked from joining the EU, Marc Botenga?
I think that's one of the fundamental rights that should be a condition indeed.
Marc Botenga really struggling there with the yes or no answers.
No, sorry, yes.
Dave McAllister,
yes.
In your view?
Yes.
And should geopolitical considerations like countering Russian or Chinese influence justify faster EU enlargement?
Yes.
Very dangerous, and I'm going to continue struggling with yes or no.
Has the EU...
What, Russian and Chinese influence, you're struggling?
No, I'm not struggling with Russia or Chinese influence. What I'm saying is, should we... That's always a disadvantage speaking to a Euro bubble audience, of course. But what I'm saying is that the best way to deal with that is not necessarily by an unfair enlargement process.
Final question. Have you agreed with anything you've heard from your opponent today?
Have
you agreed with anything that you have heard from your opponent today?
Look, I know Marc Botenga. He's a member of our committee, and I would say he's a staunch fighter for social rights, and that's where I would give him credit.
And what about you, Marc Botenga?
No, absolutely. I think we share certain ideas of that Europe should become more democratic and clearly also more social. So I'm going to take the EPP up on this. I mean, this is going to be a starting point for a new cooperation.
And that point brings this very special first edition of The Ring to an end. A round of applause. Thank you so much, David McAllister and Marc Botenga. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll be live every Wednesday night on Euronews. See you very soon. Take care.
Marc, shake hands.
Well done, men. Thank you. Yes, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Maeve. Of course, that is a ring that will be on your television on Wednesday night. The idea that we have is how do we take the parliament into your homes? And of course, this is a format that we're very proud of and will be, as I mentioned, on Euronews every Wednesday on prime time. Now, moving on, remember when we started, we talked about all the leadership, the people, the faces driving this process. They are all with us today. One of those countries is a strategic country, but you heard it also from the European Commissioner before, facing some serious challenges is Serbia. For many years, it was seen as a front runner, but obviously it's not a secret. The process has stalled. We are now going to debate with the Serbian president, who's with us today, Aleksandar Vucic, and of course, my colleague, Stefan Grob. Thank you so much. Good luck.
Mr. President. Welcome to the speech. So glad to do it. Please. Hello and welcome to the Europe Conversation. I'm Stefan Grobe. My guest today is the President of Serbia, Aleksandar Vucic, a man whose political journey an American news magazine once described as from nationalist hawk to devout Europeanist. Mr. President, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm privileged to be with you here.
The article I was referring to was from 2014. Are you still a devout Europeanist?
In the meantime, I became a usual suspect. But as a matter of fact, yeah, I'm pro-European oriented.
Now, Serbia is an interesting country. People love Donald Trump, and people are also very fond of Vladimir Putin. I wonder, is there any excitement for Europe or European leaders? We never see any European flags during the protests.
I'm not a leader of protests, at least, but there is a very rational explanation for that. First of all, Serbs, they have always been pro-Republican oriented, speaking about United States elections, because we believe that we suffered a lot from democratic administration in 1999 and even after that. And that's why people very much welcomed President Trump's victory, and it's very obvious that he has a very large scale of popularity in my country. At the same time, Russia has been a traditional ally of Serbia for not many decades, but for centuries, and that's another reason. Speaking about European leader, people are still very rational, and they think that EU path is the best way and the best path for Serbia in the future. But speaking about the leaders, yeah, I believe that people in my country, they do respect the President Costa, Ursula von der Leyen as a commissioner leader, particularly because of different behavior comparing to all the others, because she was visiting twice or even 3 times not only Belgrade, but the other areas, southern part of Serbia, which is a very rare case. That's what our people really respect. I cannot make comparison in popularity, but if you ask people, there is a still majority of people that would like to join the European Union.
Do you fear that Serbia becomes another Turkey, dwelling in the European waiting room forever?
Yeah, we are. In the last 3 years, I believe that some of previous speakers here were saying something about Serbia, and there are a few facts. Serbia didn't open any single chapter, any single cluster in the last 3.5 years. It very much coincides with the fact that at that time war in Ukraine started. And we were the only country that did not impose sanctions against Russia, although we have always been very supportive to territorial integrity of Ukraine, to UN Charter, to UN resolutions, and we have always been condemning an incursion and everything that was going on Ukrainian territory, but it was not enough. It became, as some of your previous guests were saying, more a sort of geopolitical game than a merit-based process, but that's how it goes. We have to face it. And at the same time, I believe that we'll have to consider all the remarks, all the demands from European Union. We need to change the level of our enthusiasm, the level of our energy, to understand what we were doing in a wrong way and to go much faster. Just to say a few words to your people here. When you say Serbia, it means, comparing to Western Balkans, it is almost 55% of overall Western Balkans export to EU. Serbia is, regarding that issue, bigger than all the others altogether. Speaking about FDI attraction, last 3 years, Serbia was more than 60% of overall in attracting foreign direct investments than all the others in the Western Balkans, much bigger. And at the same time, yes, I know that we are facing thousands of doubts from different member states because of our relationship with Beijing, with Moscow. I cannot, and I'm not going to justify myself for talking with someone. I think it's really stupid, and I'm not a pupil in an elementary school, to tell you the truth. I believe that everybody should talk to each other, and I think it's very healing, and it doesn't mean that I agree with someone if I speak to someone. And what was very strange to me, because I heard the words of criticism and I accept it, I'm the culprit, from Marta Kos. Well, it was not just that he went to Moscow. I had plenty of reasons to go there. I had to do something with the gas arrangement. I had to discuss oil industry of Serbia, which was sanctioned at that time by United States of America. And they are an owners of our oil industry of Serbia. I had several issues to discuss it. What was the alternative to that? But no one actually from Europe asked me. Yes, Costa and Ursula asked me, but not the others. What was the content of our meeting? What we discussed? Because I was not interfering into Ukrainian or meddling into Ukrainian-Russian conflict because I'm a small guy coming from a small country. I don't give a chance to myself to interfere into something big that either big countries, either European Union deserves to do so. I don't do it. I was discussing my small issues, which are big issues for my people, for Serbian people. And that was my intention. But at the end, I would like to see, if I may say this here, because I was always a big fan of that rule, audiatur et altera pars, hear the other side or listen to the other side as well. I would like to see all the leaders speaking to each other. That's the only way to overcome today's situation. But I know that nobody likes to hear it because I see that everybody is smiling and laughing and joking when we say something bad about the others. I'm not going to make jokes about US, China, Russia. I think it's too serious to make any kind of jokes. I believe that we need talks.
There's a lot of to unpack here of what you said. I will come to that in a minute. But first, when you travel across Europe, meeting people, meeting your counterparts, how would you rate the support and the excitement within the European Union for a Serbian membership?
It's different. When I speak to Southerners, there is much bigger support. I'm going to meet President Macron in a few days. Again, I believe that we have had so far French support, Italian support. I was meeting Giorgia Meloni several times in last 12 months. It's pretty much the same with Spaniards, Portuguese, Greek, and the others. It's a bit different when we go to Benelux countries, and it's a bit different when we speak to Baltic countries and Scandinavian countries. We'll have German Minister of Foreign Affairs very soon in Belgrade in a few days. I have spoken recently to Chancellor Merc. We had some good talks, and I hope that we'll be able to hosting him soon in Belgrade, which means January, February next year.
When you were in China earlier this year, you told a Chinese interviewer that you didn't sleep the entire night before your talks with President Xi the next day. I wonder, do you experience the same sleeplessness before a day of talks with Ursula von der Leyen?
You want to see this? I'm not a witty person at all. I believe that I'm, at least from time to time, too serious and very responsible. Yes, I cannot overcome this type of jitters, never ever. And I do a lot of preparations. And I was doing a lot of preparations last night for my meeting with António Costa, and I do my best to analyze, to scrutinize everything, to learn by heart what is necessary, and I'm not ashamed to say this. And from time to time I act as a student, you know, because I believe that I should be well prepared and at least not to be surprised in any kind of discussion I might have. And this is not going to be changed, and I believe in speaking to Chinese president. It's a great opportunity for the leader, small guy from a very proud country that might deliver messages that he needs. And it's the same when I speak to Ursula, it's the same when I speak to António. I know them, and I met them more times than I was meeting President Xi, but that's how it goes.
Let's talk about foreign policy, a topic you're at loggerheads with the European Union. You have repeatedly supported Ukraine's territorial integrity, even saying that Crimea and Donbas are and will always be part of Ukraine. Yet you oppose the EU's anti-Russian sanctions. Why?
I do not oppose. We are not an EU member state. I cannot do anything on this. I cannot influence it. But I can tell you,
saying
no,
you would support them once you're in the EU?
I can tell you, but we are not a member of EU. But we were not. Nobody asked us about anything. They just tell us you have to align with it. And I can tell you one thing: we were under sanctions for many years, and it actually harmed ordinary people. It has always been the case, and it did not bring the very best result. And I have some doubts about the outcome of huge sanction packages that were imposed against Russia in the last 3.5 or 4 years, whatever. And but we had no influence on that. Speaking about Ukrainian territorial integrity, it means that we observe UN Charter, UN resolutions, and all the values of international public law. That's how it goes. That's the way we protect our territorial integrity. And also, it's easy to rebuke. It's easy to scold small countries like Serbia, which are not members of the club. Because you have a usual suspect, you have always a good culprit for everything. And even Commissioner was saying, it's not fair, it's not good, it's not nice if he goes to Moscow. Had to go, had to take care of vital issues for my people and for my country. That was of an utmost, of super interest of my people and of my country. But I didn't hear that she was mentioning, or anybody else was mentioning, many other European leaders. And I'm not speaking about Viktor Orban. many other European leaders that were speaking to Putin in the meantime. And I went there after 3 years of war, not before that, and I wanted to discuss our bilateral issues. Did not interfere into this big war agenda, big issues, because I know my place, I know the place of my country. And I think it's a very fair response. And as you can see, I say what I think to you here, I say the same in my country, I say it everywhere.
You said last week in an interview with a German media outlet that Serbia was ready to sell ammunition to EU countries, even if Ukraine
We were discussing that 5 years ago. We were discussing that 5 and 4 and 3 years ago.
Right, but
and I was saying to them, the following. Here's the story. We are able to produce, let's say, 155 to 160,000 of different type of shells. Mortar shells, 60 millimeters, 80, 81, 82 millimeters, both Soviet NATO calibers, 120 millimeters, from all howitzer shells, 155, 152, tank, rocket artillery shells, 122, 128, whatever millimeters, which is still equal or a bit more than France. And I said to them, we have 30,000 people that are dependent on our ability to sell this ammunition to someone. Now it's a good market. Whatever we produce, we can sell it. But when we sell it, then we got, but no one mentioned that here, because it didn't fit to their story. We got 2 very strong statements from Russian foreign intelligence against Serbia and myself, because they found some shells on Ukrainian side.
Is that why you halted the exports in June?
That was one of the reasons, because we didn't want to arm up any war infections. But now we have a problem, because we need to sell it to someone, and we'll sell it to whomever we can in order to earn some money, but we'll try to take care and not to see that ammunition in that war zone. But it happens from time to time. At the end, we'll have to pay our workers.
Okay. So we've heard...
And tell me, is there something that is not rational?
No, absolutely. I'm not saying you're irrational, but I just wonder, what is the change of heart? When in June you banned the exports, and now you're saying we're ready to...
It's not a change. We need to survive. I'm not saying that we are going to give it to Russians or to Ukrainians. I say that we need to sell it to someone in the world.
Okay. Speaking of survival, your country was once seen as a front runner in the race of EU membership.
Before the war in Ukraine.
Before the war in Ukraine. But
yes.
Now the EU Commission is saying there's a backsliding of the rule of law in Serbia, insufficient reform, no detectable
it's not seen in reports.
Progress. Now, my question is the EU too harsh on Serbia?
I would like to say that, but I promised myself not to do it. Yes, I do my best to keep my word. They asked me to change my narrative, otherwise I would say so. But I'm not going to do it. It means that now let me use this great, even Euronews bureaucratic language. And you can see that I'm still able to learn it. Serbia is very much committed to its EU path and will take it in a very serious and responsible way. All the remarks, all the demands from EU partners, and considering it will change our attitudes and our stances on different issues, and will improve our behavior in the future, and we hope that the European Union will notice it. Thank you very much. This is how it goes.
EU Commissioner Kos said that that Serbia has too much presidential power, and that everything
that's an issue.
Everything about enlargement is done by the president, and that's bad. What do you say? What do you say to that?
Fully agree with her. See, learned a lesson.
Okay.
Good news is I'm not going to be the president within a year and month, 13 months. That's a good news. Then some other people will do it.
Okay. I'm going to talk one question, if I may, sir, about the domestic situation. We've been seeing protests for a year now, following.
We've been seeing protests for 11 years in Serbia.
All right. Following the Novi Sad catastrophe.
Yes.
My question is, are you worried that things might get out of hand, that there is an escalation of the protests? And also, if I may, do you think that the country is changing faster than you have thought?
Our country, I'm amazed with the changes that we provided. You, dear Stefan, come to Belgrade. You wouldn't recognize the city, not from your own experience, but not even from the photos you've seen. Each time, let's say, my friend Mario David is coming to Belgrade, he has to realize and to acknowledge that he hasn't seen such a big improvement and changes almost in any other country, not only in our region. According to IMF anticipation, Serbia is going to have the biggest growth rate almost in an entire Europe in the next 4 years. Speaking about protests, I was facing protests since I became the Prime Minister in 2014. Before that, I was Deputy Prime Minister for 2 years. Since then, we had maybe altogether 6 months without protests. But even having in mind all this stuff, we were progressing well with good growth rates. Also, need to tell you one thing. When I became the Prime Minister, public debt, just to see how disciplined we were, public debt to GDP ratio in Serbia was 79%. Now it's 43%, twice less than average European public debt to GDP ratio. Yeah. And for the first time in our history, and the only country in an entire region, we got an investment grade from Fitch, and we are getting it from Standard as well, and I believe within 6 months from Moody's as well. It speaks for itself. And speaking about the report, you see everything about economy and fiscal and financial stability. Great grades, great marks, which is of an utmost importance for the people, for the citizens. And I really mean now, put my jokes aside, I really mean that we need many things to do regarding rule of law. I'm very ready to participate in that process, or at least to be helpful to the government. And I think that Serbia has long legs, and that we can overtake all the front runners of today, and that we can join European Union relatively soon.
I have, Mr. President, one final short question, and maybe you give me a short answer. You're in your second term. Your term expires in 2027, right?
Yes.
What are your post-presidential plans? What can Europe expect from Aleksandar Vucic?
I have no plans. I have a big dream to finish this expo. Serbia is hosting a specialized expo in 2027. Expo for us is not just an exhibition. We're going to gather the biggest number of countries so far. The record number was 117 in Astana in Kazakhstan. And till today, we have already gotten confirmation of 127 countries that might participate in that expo. But we need to do a lot of infrastructural works. We need to prepare ourselves. And this is all about my legacy. For the first time, we had a stable currency for the last 12 years in our entire history. We built more hospitals, more science and technological parks than ever before, more kilometers of highways and motorways and high-speed railways than 60 or 65 years before that. This is my legacy. Very proud of that. Haven't decided yet, will do my best to be supportive to my colleagues regarding securing the legacy and helping them in that political battle. Have no other plans. There are big issues in front of us. And speaking about protests, I appreciate those protests whenever they are calm and tranquil. And in a political sense, I like it. I have to be very honest and finishing with this. Because all their political numbers are going down, plunging, ours are going up. I'm begging them to keep on protesting, and many thanks for that.
Good. Wonderful conclusion.
Yeah.
Aleksandar Vucic, President of Serbia, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks a lot. Wish you all the best. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Of course, different views, as we said earlier. Now, as we promised, we would talk to all the leaders involved in this process, and there is one country that we've not spoken with yet, and that is Albania, but you heard it from the commissioner himself. Countries she believes are the front runners is Albania and Montenegro. So on that note, I'm happy to say we are now joined. He could not be with us today for, well, things that happen in politics, last-minute situation, but he is with us now. It's the Prime Minister of Albania, Edi Rama, who should join us now online, and he will be interviewed by my colleague, Sasha Vakulina. Thank you very much.
We are going to continue the EU enlargement talks at this historic Euronews Enlargement Summit. And yes, indeed, last but certainly not least, the front runner country. Here we go. Edi Rama, Prime Minister of Albania. Thank you very much for joining us. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good evening, and sorry to not be able to be with you. It was not political last minute. It was a technical air problem that I had nothing to do with, but I couldn't take the plane.
Well, we hope next time you're going to be able to join us here in person. And for today, we thank you for joining us here online for this new Euronews format. This is 12 minutes with Edi Rama, Prime Minister of Albania. Thank you for being here. As you heard today from the report and from Marta Cos, indeed Albania is one of the front runners, and the accession negotiations reached unprecedented momentum this year with preparations for the opening of the last cluster before the end of the year, now, quote, well advanced. Now, this report seems very positive for you. What's your take on it?
Yeah, the report is very positive, and the whole year has been extremely positive. We have opened 5 of 6 clusters within only 11 months, which is an absolute record in terms of speed. It's something that I've been able to imagine, but this is why life is so beautiful.
So what's the secret? Why don't you share this secret with other candidate countries? What was that, key factor? What was your secret in speeding it up so much then?
Beyond the platitude that it's a hard work, I would add that the speed is related with 2 main factors. On one hand, during what I call years of humiliation, which were the years when the EU Commission was recommending to the Council to open accession talks with Albania, and we were rejected by few countries. We stubbornly prepared for the moment of the opening, and we trained in the hardest way with all our team by simply saying to ourselves, our moment to show our true colors will come, and for that moment we have to be ready. And as a matter of fact, when the moment came, we were much more advanced than maybe others in that precise moment of the opening.
Well, given that this has been indeed a very long process for Albania, it has been 16 years altogether. You've previously spoken about the shifting goalposts by Brussels. Do you feel like this has changed and there is this new push and this situation is over for Albania, but also for the other candidates from the region, because they have been also waiting for a very long time?
And here comes the factor number 2, which is exactly Brussels, that changed its approach and woke up. Unfortunately, it was needed an aggression in the European soil, military aggression, to make Brussels wake up, not simply in the level of the Commission, where we have always found fairness, very painful, very neurotic, but fair, but also in the level of the Council, where the blah, blah, blah of before that, yes, one day we'll be together, yes, we love you, yes, we're going to marry, but we are not ready to talk for the moment, was over, and a new momentum is still here, and the new approach, it's still the case. I hope that this will not fade away, and I very much hope that we will finally get together around the same table.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about whether this momentum and this situation of more of serious commitment, as you described there, whether it is going to last. Albania is now considered one of the front runners. Your goal is to enter the EU by 2030. Now, how do you also see this situation with the shifting goalposts by Brussels changing or possibly not changing for the other countries in your region?
I didn't get the last part of the question.
I will repeat that, Prime Minister. You said that indeed there is a big...
what I said I know, but I don't know what you said.
The question was, do you feel this change by Brussels also now being implemented and being seen for the other countries from your region?
Well, for this you have to ask Brussels, but as far as I am concerned, I might tell you that the 2030 is not a date that I saw in a dream, but it's a deadline that is the result of a very simple calculation. We start from the fact that together with the Commission, in full consensus with the Commission, we have agreed on a calendar that is very ambitious, but it's doable, of homework for us to conclude the accession talks, the negotiations, at the end of 2027. There is a possibility to do it even faster, let's say in the first half of 27, and would be reasons for that, but let's say end of 27. And then the average time we have looked into when it comes to the 27 parliaments to ratify the decision is around 2 years, and this is how we envisage Albania to sit around the table of the EU on 2030. But of course, we are not at all against to be there faster. Now, when it comes to the region as such, I would fully agree, and I echo the words of David McAllister previously, who said this is a very merit-based process. Everyone has its own path, and everyone has to fulfill its own obligations and to do its own homework. So and there are different characteristics in the region. There are different countries, different histories, and so on and so further. When it comes to us, I can say with a very loud voice that we are the most Euro-optimistic nation in Europe. or as Donald Trump would say, on earth.
Prime Minister, there is a specific focus as well by Brussels. This is slightly on the downside, probably, of the report, with the focus from Brussels coming regarding the issue of corruption. Now, what I want to ask you is that Albania is the first country in the world to appoint an AI as government minister, specifically tasked with fighting corruption. Now, would you give us an update? How is Diela doing? How is her and your fight going on?
Before going to Diela and her fight, let me remind you and everyone that has still the patience to follow this long day of yours, for which I'm very grateful, that Albania is doing something unseen and unique in the whole region. Our justice reform and our recognition of the not only de jure but the de facto independence of justice, and the full-fledged operation of a special structure against organized crime and corruption has practically created in Albania and for Albania the example that the fight against corruption is something that goes very, very much beyond words, very much beyond makeups, and it goes very deep, and it goes very, let's say, balanced, without looking left, without looking right, independently from who is in government, who is in opposition, who was in power, who is in power, and with a lot of facts that show that what never happened in Albania from the day of independence and creation of the Albanian state in 1912 to until very few years ago, it's happening the last years, something that no other country in the region can claim to have done. And this is not to say that we are better than the others, but this is to say that we have taken it very seriously. And in this moment in time, we accept support, we accept partnership, we accept help, but we don't accept lectures from anyone when it comes on fight against corruption. And of course, when it comes to Diela, she is the product of a systemic fight, which is not just about fighting cases and fighting in the court of law, but which is about fighting through modernization. And we aim to have within 2027, the first full AI public procurement that will allow speed, transparency, accuracy in levels that are unseen.
Prime Minister, finally, let me ask you to wrap this up. What is the next creative idea and the next creative solution coming from you and from Albania on your way to the European Union membership?
I'm sure you have heard that Diela is pregnant, and she has 83 babies based on the last ecography. So we have to wait for her to give birth to these 83 babies. And in the meantime, I have to tell you one thing that has not been much discussed, that we are the only country in this process to use artificial intelligence in the transfer of the acquis communautaire to our body of law, and to make of it the fastest process ever made in terms of not only translating but also analyzing the impact and drafting and preparing the whole legal packages for the approval in Parliament. So we are trying to run as much as possible and to make as much as possible leapfrogs using technology, artificial intelligence. But without never ever forgetting that our place in Europe is first and foremost deserved because Europe has the best place in the heart of the whole Albanian nation, something that the others cannot pretend.
Prime Minister, I have to follow up. Do you think Brussels could use an AI commissioner?
It's not for me to tell Brussels what to do, but of course I would be very happy to introduce Diela with whomever on the EU side will introduce him or herself like an AI commissioner or an AI technocrat or bureaucrat or whatever else. It doesn't matter.
Prime Minister, thank you very much for this interview and for your time, and thank you very much for joining us here. There was 12 minutes with Edi Rama, Prime Minister of Albania.
Thank you so much, Sasha Vakalina, for that, and of course Edi Rama, always bringing some humour to EU debates and EU summits. So we thank him so much for being with us here at our summit. Pity he couldn't come physically, but we're thrilled he could join as well, albeit remotely. And I'm afraid that brings our summit almost to the end. It's been incredible. What are your main takeaways?
Yes, I mean, all of the leaders that we spoke, obviously the many challenges that are happening, I would say. But I'm not going to give names. I think there's 2 countries that definitely make it before 2030, 2 that are on the line, 1 that is absolutely not going to do it. But I'm not going to give names.
As we can see, it's a deeply complex topic. It's a sensitive topic. It's a fascinating topic, and we've only really scratched the surface with this Euronews Enlargement Summit, the one of its kind event. For more, of course, you can read our live blog. Thank you so much to all our reporters in our newsroom today at Euronews in Brussels who've been writing up all the various articles on the different countries and their very long path towards Brussels membership. One thing is clear, Euronews has put EU enlargement on the agenda. The Commission, as we've seen, has put it back on the agenda, and we're deeply grateful to you all for being with us here at this historic Enlargement Summit, and thank you as well to all our viewers who've been with us as well.
And we'll follow up next year. We'll do the temperature check and the progress card.
We will. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and see you soon.
See you next
of course,
year.
on Euronews.
Thank you very much.